You're watching City Channel 4, your window to our community.
Welcome to our Iowa City Council budget work session of January 10th, 2017. Kingsley Botchway got called into jury duty this morning, so he's not here now. I don't think he's going to be here for the next several hours. If he shows up, though, that's good. Also, Jeff reminds me that this entire work session will be videotaped or whatever, digitally taped. Jack's over there doing it. So we should be conscious of that fact. All right.
Are you talking to me?
I'm talking to me. I don't know. Sometimes it's hard to be conscious about anything.
What should I do with my spitballs?
All right. So the first order of business is to review Saturday's work session discussion about the budget itself and the three-year financial plan, I guess. Anybody can begin. Jeff, you didn't want to say anything, just wanted to see if there was dialogue, discussion.
Correct.
I don't know if other people have had time to do a lot of digesting on it. I have not with my work schedule. And that's why I asked on Saturday that we put it on the work session for our first meeting. I think it's in February. So if that works for people, I would just as soon defer discussion of it till then.
I was just going to say that.
Well, go ahead.
I had actually thought we were going to focus on the capital improvement
Yeah.
projects just today and not actually give substantive feedback.
You don't have to. I mean,
Yes.
Susan makes a good suggestion.
Yeah,
If that works for folks.
that works
I
for
mean,
me.
I think it's
Have my
better
vote.
to have everything, I think, covered as well before revisiting what we saw on Saturday. At a work session, we can hash out both the capital plan and the...
Yes,
Yeah. I just like a little more time to
absolutely.
digest stuff.
Agreed.
I always defer to Susan's judgment on that.
So Terry, you're going to be the outlier.
No. Terry, no vote.
All right. Well, I can say I've been just kind of swamped over the past several days, so it sounds like a great idea to me.
The public hearing isn't till the 21st, so we
Right.
have plenty of time to.
So you mark the date down, Jeff?
We have it
Ashley?
down.
Good
Yep.
deal.
Perfect.
All right.
Thank you.
Okay, so leaping ahead, getting ahead of our agenda here, we're going to turn to capital improvements projects. And it looks to me like Ron and Dennis are going to speak first, right? So who's going to talk?
Kick it off.
Okay,
All right.
Ron Kanucky.
All right. All right. Thank you for the opportunity to present the capital program to you. We have the budget for the capital program starts on page 495 in the budget book. We'll pretty much follow along in the project order as it's presented in the budget book. There's one project that's switched out of order just because of making it a part of a group of projects. Let's see here. I'm going to go ahead and do this. See if we get the lights down. All right. Perfect. How have we gotten to this point? In September, Dennis and the finance group sent out the request to the departments as far as projects that should be included as far as new projects and updates to the projects that we already had in the program last year. As we followed through the calendar, it culminated with the December 16th presentation in the council packet as far as the budget went. We'll have, you'll see about $171 million worth of projects over the 5-year program. Those are focused in 9 areas of our operations. Mike Tharp will present on the airport projects. Dennis will present on the finance. Chief Greer will have the fire projects. Susan Craig will be in regards to library. Doug Boothroyd for the NDS projects. Julie Saddle Johnson for the parks. We'll have Kumi Morris will actually present for the police project. There's only one of those. Jason Havel will step up for the public works. And then we'll have Chris O'Brien with the transportation services and resource management projects. Then the last area is the on the radar. So those are the projects that are on the unfunded list or new projects that aren't currently shown on the unfunded list that we feel are significant projects that we need to be prepared for or just want to bring to your attention. So with that, I will have Dennis go through the finance piece.
This slide here, thank you. This slide here shows you the projects in the 5-year program by division. And you can see that the streets division, the streets projects are by far and away the majority of the projects, at least dollar-wise, in the program. Other significant divisions are the Public Works Administration, the transit operations, and then wastewater and parks. A few of the major projects that are pushing that. If you look at that street operations, there's a $43 million project in there for the Gateway project. So that represents about half of that street budget there. And the Public Works admin, that $18.6 million, about $12 million of that is for the new Public Works facility. And for the transit operations, really the bulk of that $18 million presented there represents the transit and equipment facility, and that's out in 2021. And then in the parks, about half of that is for the Ped Mall reconstruction. So that gives you an idea of where the capital dollars are going on a divisional basis. This slide represents the projects as they're budgeted over the next 5 years. It's pretty typical that the majority of the dollars are in the first couple of years, as we have a much better idea of what's going to happen next year and the year after versus 5 years from now. I will mention that in 17-18 is the Gateway project, so that is also pushing those dollars up. And then in 2021, you see that tick up, and that is where that transit facility project is. That helps push that number in 2021 up a little bit higher. The program by funding source. This gives you an idea of where the dollars are coming from over the next 5 years to pay for the program. You can see that our number one funding source is GO bonds. We do estimate about $10 million a year for GO bond funding, and that $50 million is kind of right on the mark for that. Over the next 2 years, it'll actually be a little elevated. We're looking at about $12 million in each of the next 2 years, or I should say in 18 and 19, so it's a little higher in those 2 years, and that's also, once again, the Gateway project that's pushing that number up. I think eventually we would like to get that target down to more like, $8 or $9 million a year for bond funding. Other large revenue sources, the federal grants represent a lot of airport grants, street and road grants. There is about a $12 million grant here for the transit facility, which, so that's kind of an estimate out in that 2021 year. It's not realized at this point. Another significant source of funding for capital projects is road use funding. And you can see that represents about $14 million, and that is required to go for streets, bridges, sidewalks, projects of that nature. And then still shown here is the local option sales tax. This may be the last year that that's presented, as that should be fully expended once the Gateway project is completed. So, but there is still dollars in the program that represents the spending of that temporary sales tax. Do you have any questions about the, I will make a note that the funding sources here is $162 million versus the expenditures of $171. And that difference, in case you were wondering, represents funding dollars that were put into place. Some of these are multi-year projects, so there may have been bond funding or other funding that was put into place prior to the start of this 5-year program, and which represents that gap. And once again, a good chunk of that is from the Gateway project.
All right, so with that, we'll start with the project presentations. Mike will start presenting on the airport projects. Those projects start on page 517 in the budget book.
Good afternoon, Mike.
Good afternoon again. I'd like to say I'm going to be a pace setter for everything, but I think some departments and coming behind me will take a bit longer. The airport is funded through 2 different grant programs, the FAA, which is a 90% match, and then the state, there's 2 different funds, the General Aviation Vertical Infrastructure, and then the State Airport Improvement Program, those state grants are anywhere from 70 to 85% matching. If a project doesn't get a grant fund, it doesn't proceed forward just by virtue of the cash outlay that would be required to take care of that. So all of these are dependent on the airport being able to get those grants to make the projects happen.
Mike, just to clarify, when you talk about the match, you're talking 90%, that's the FAA paying 90 and we pay 10?
Correct.
Okay, just wanted to clarify.
The biggest project, one of the ones that we've had on the books for a while, is our apron reconstruction and connecting taxiway. This is something to increase the pavement that we have available for aircraft parking. As you can see by the pictures, we do have some events, football games, other events that we do draw significant aircraft traffic to the airport. As you can see, we've got a number of aircraft on the grass, on the closed runway, and then even further out, we've got a couple of aircraft on the other side of a potentially active runway. So trying to get everything where we can keep it close in. It's a little better security-wise, a little better to keep track of the aircraft. This would be one of those FAA projects where if we got the grant, they would provide 90% of that funding. Some of the miscellaneous smaller projects, the airfield pavement rehabilitation, this is a two-phase project. We completed Phase 1 last year, which was a smaller apron expansion, but essentially what it calls for is a reconstruction of the pavement immediately adjacent to the terminal building that the aircraft use for parking. That pavement is currently some of our last original pavement that was laid in the 1950s, so it is showing signs of wear and weather decay. We hope to go after grants in the next state round of funding. Hangar A door replacement, that is a initiative that the airport wants to take. We've got 10 T-hangar units that have chain pulley doors. We'd like to retrofit those to be electric. It's a little more accessible to tenants. And then those pulleys, which, they're great, they're low maintenance, but they are getting worn out, and nobody really manages those types of doors anymore. So it's hard to find repair pieces when we need them. The runway 7, 3465, and 3466, this is an initiative from the airport master plan that would call for extending runway 725 another 213 feet. That would enable, with the other changes to the remarking, enable the 25 end to get right there at the 5,000-foot landing distance mark that aircraft companies, charter companies like to see, mainly for insurance purposes. But one of those initiatives that we think will increase the usage of the airport, increase the capabilities of the airport to handle the aircraft that do want to use us. The airport south taxiway extension, this is a FY2017 project. We did get a state grant for this. We were able to work with the FBO. This is actually currently under construction, their 10,000 square foot hangar. This would let the airport extend that taxiway, that orange strip right there, to match the apron and where the new building is being located. And this is a 70% grant. North T hangar restrooms. This project is something to provide additional restroom facilities on the North T hangar area. With some of our recent hangar buildings to the south, we've had the opportunity to install a publicly accessible restroom on the south side, so we'd like to go back and essentially retrofit one of our storage areas that we no longer use to that extent and turn it into a restroom facility. And the last project that I believe we have on the schedule is a airport tractor replacement. This is something that we've worked with the equipment division on. It aligns with the equipment replacement schedule. We've got some extra money in there because we would like to upgrade the size of the tractor just by virtue of the way we're using it. It's a little small for the capacity. We do use it a lot for snow plowing, and it is our prime farm tractor in terms of grass maintenance and mowing. But in the winter, it's a bit light for the snow moving. And
Mike,
that's-
just one other qualification. So when the numbers are in here for the total project costs, year by year, those are the actual total, but what we would be expending is what the match is. Is that correct? Okay.
Correct.
Thanks. That makes the numbers look better.
Anything else for Mike?
This is probably going to be a question I may ask more than once, but with these projects that get the matching grant or, percentages of one degree or another, taking, for example, say the apron reconstruction where most of the money is coming from the federal grants, once that project is completed, let's assume we go forward with it, we build it. In 50 years, this one has a 50-year life, useful life. Whose obligation will it be financially to replace that construction?
It would still be, presuming the programs don't change, it would still be an eligible,
So it would be eligible for
reconstruction work.
Reconstruction as
Yeah,
well.
it would be our responsibility to maintain it over that life, so crack sealing, pavement repair type stuff would fall on us, but the major rehab that would need to be done at the end of that 50-year to replace it would be an eligible project again.
But to be honest with ourselves and others, we need to acknowledge that it's hard to predict what kind of federal or state programs will exist 50 years from now. Or we know what happened, what existed 50 years ago and what's happened since then, but it's hard to project into the future that far for programs. Yeah. Okay, thanks, Mike.
Thank you.
The finance department, we just have a couple of projects here to touch on. One is our annual City Hall project, and we put from the general fund about $50,000 a year into City Hall improvements, and then each year maybe something happens, maybe it doesn't. It's determined if something is needed. Currently in the works are exterior landscaping for the building, interior and exterior signage, and also we're looking at carpet in the city clerk and human resource offices.
As promised. Hi, Kingsley.
Another project in the works, and this project, the phone system replacement, is currently under design and going to RFP. And this will replace the entire city's phone system to a voice-over IP system. The current system is dated, and the parts are no longer available for the phone system. So we'll be looking, this is being funded from Internal Service Fund, ITS funds, and next year we'll be looking at replacing the city's phone system.
And with that, Chief Greer will join us. The fire projects start on page 524 in the budget book.
Good afternoon, Chief.
Howdy. How's everybody doing?
Good.
Really good.
Very well.
We just started.
So far.
We're making such great
We're
progress.
going to go
you
with the
wouldn't
glass
believe it.
half full all day long.
Yeah,
here.
exactly.
Oh, and Kingsley, you got out of your commitment. Apparatus replacement program, we do have a few projects coming up starting in 2019 for 2 pumper engines. We actually pushed one of our replacements from 17 to 19. We do all of our equipment replacement by analysis score of mileage, how much we're spending to maintain it, working with the equipment division. And for the one pumper that we were going to replace, it wasn't needing replaced, so we did not. We've also reduced the fleet size by 1 fire apparatus. We used to have another pumper engine that we used, but it had grown outdated, so we did sell it to Oxford, and they are still getting some good life out of it, and they're very happy with it, so it was good. Next would be a fire safety house replacement in 2020 for $60,000. Again, we've kind of deferred the replacement of the one we have now because we've been making some minor repairs to it, and it still meets the need, but it's probably getting to the edges of its life. But we will maintain it as long as we can, so we might anticipate moving that another year. And then the big one in 2021 for apparatus replacement is replacement of Quint 2. It's basically an engine with a ladder stuck on top. That works out as Station 2. That allows us to have a ladder on each side of the river, servicing both sides of the city. That's a little, as you can see, a little more expensive one. We do a 16-year replacement typically for our pumpers, 9 frontline, 7 reserve. The Quint is on a 9-year replacement. Just by the make of the apparatus, it gets a little more wear and tear going around town. Again, if the score doesn't indicate it needs to be replaced, we would recommend pushing that. The other one is for 2017, we have $700,000 set aside for the fire training center relocation. This is part of that bigger public works campus project. But this would allow us to have a training facility within the city, allow us to go down there without having to schedule a little easier on us. It would also allow for other potential city departments to use it. The police department could use it for some of their training. There would be a burn room in here, some SE Bay mazes. We could do ladder work, all those things that we need to get some time practicing on. That's all I have.
A couple questions. Who else uses that training facility? Who else used it prior?
Our prior training facility would use, mutual aid companies in the county would use it as well. So typically Oxford, Tiffin, Riverside, there's 13, I think, in the mutual aid. So we would open it up to allow them to use it.
Was there any shared costs discussed when we were talking about the project?
We have not had those discussions. We would allow them to give us some funds to pay for any materials they would use, but other than that, we haven't. Typical use of what we've kind of had with Coralville. If we use something, a resource, then we replace it. Excellent. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. Good afternoon, Susan.
Hi. We have such pitiful small amounts in the CIP. You know, just a few $100,000 here, a few $100,000 there. In FY17, this year we'll be spending the money on the bookmobile, which, as I said on Saturday, we expect to be delivered in April. That project is pretty much on budget. The next thing up for FY18 is some reconfiguring of several spaces in the library. This is similar to what we did a couple of years ago when we moved some desks around and created the teen space, but it's really a smaller project. We're reconfiguring the computer lab, which, you know, as I always say, was designed in the last century. We did the designs for this building in 1998-99. And it's just not very flexible anymore for the types of work that we do in there. There's no place for anybody to plug anything in because everything was envisioned as you come in, you sit at a fixed workstation, and it's just time to upgrade that. We are also in discussions with designers on removing either the wall, would be on the east or the west, to make more space in that room for some different types of to introduce some different types of technology. In the children's space, the newest thing in library services is to focus, to bring some more focus, and we've been doing it through our programming, which I talked some about on Saturday, for those upper elementary grade students. You know, for many, many years, libraries have really focused on the preschool child, and then we sort of started doing a lot of work with those K through 2 kids as they're, you know, learning to read and doing that. And now we're coming back around and trying also to keep those upper elementary kids engaged. And as you can see from this space, you know, it's not a place a 5th grader would really want to hang out. So it's no walls tearing down, some added electricity because they're carrying their phones around too, or working on an iPad, but more seating, paint, storage to bring things out on tables for them to be engaged with. So those are the 2 projects we have in FY18. And then out in 2021 is the biggest of the 3 projects. Involves recarpeting major parts of the building that have not been recarpeted yet. In the project a couple years ago, we recarpeted very worn areas like the entrances to the main library and into the children's room. By this time, those will probably have to be done again. Hopefully, the teen center, that carpet will still be good. We'll be moving from, when the building was built, carpet tiles were sort of just coming into their own. We'd be using carpet tiles for this new for the recarpeting project, which would make things more flexible. Over the years, we have used all the carpet scraps we had, though, to sort of replace and repair where things needed it. But it's time to plan for some major recarpeting in the building, and also some furniture replacement. Again, it's an ongoing thing. We have money in our operating budget every year and try and do a project to repair or replace some significant part of our furnishings. But the carrels where the public access computers are, will be very worn by that time and need to be replaced. So those are our 3 projects. Any questions?
I'm wondering, STEAM seems to be the word du jour with those remodel of the sort of the early elementary school. Is STEAM sort of going to be a focus where we'd sort of have a makerspace type focus, or is that sort of what you're shooting for? And if not, are there any plans for something along those lines?
We do a lot of STEAM programming now, and we just pull tables out and do it in the storytime room. This new space would be hopefully more attractive to the upper elementary kids than just doing all the programming in the storytime room. And the computer lab has always served as sort of swing space for upper elementary kids programs as well. For instance, we do our Minecraft programs up there. So we would expect to see a certain amount of the STEAM-related programming done in that computer lab space.
Great.
What percentage of the building is used for meeting or gathering versus bookshelves and things of that sort? Do you have any
I
idea?
could not tell you. Percentage-wise, if you go to the second floor, we have regular visitors to the library that never go to the second floor. But the second floor has seating at tables. If you're using technology at those tables, it's because you brought it yourself. And there are probably seats up there for 150 people at tables. In addition, on the second floor, we have 3 small group study rooms that will accommodate 6 people. And we have some small 2-person study rooms too, which again are focused on that gathering kind of joint working together.
I mean, the reason I ask is I think, I know the Parks Department is promoting, Gather Here is
Yes.
the master plan's motto. And in touring the new music school building, it seems that the amount of space in that building for socializing is impressive. So I feel like I support that. I think it's a useful strategy in terms of increasing the use and value of the building.
Right. The whole concept behind all of our public meeting rooms has been a gathering space since day one. You do have to think a little ahead and get a room booked, but the rooms are open and available free to individuals, to nonprofits, and they are small or large for whatever. The whole civic nature of gathering and conversation is part of our mission.
I'd just like to praise the library for one of many particular aspects. I'm thinking of the second floor, mainly the south-facing windows and the windows on the east and west. And on a sunny winter day, it's really lovely up there, and a great place to sit down and do some work or read a newspaper or whatever one wants to do.
Right. I think it's very welcoming.
Good deal. Any more questions for Susan? We bombarded you. I hope you don't take
No.
exception to that, but
Thanks.
thank you, Susan.
Jeff, can I go back and ask one quick question? Because I'm not sure how long staff is going to be here through this. On the Fire Training Center, what is the $50,000 increase in annual operating expenses? I just tried to look at each of these in terms of their impact on the annual operating budget, and I noticed that one at 50, and I was just curious what that was. Thank you, Chief. Sorry I didn't get you when you were still up
Not
here.
to cheat on Ron's sheet.
At the very bottom on the budget impact,
I think that's just our estimate on materials that we would use there, power, if there's any type of security, all those different things associated with just operating the facility. I think I took that from a previous year's submission,
Okay,
and I knew that we would not go over that, but I did not want to undershoot the
okay.
estimate.
Okay, thank you,
That's why.
appreciate it.
And I should have mentioned, well, since I got it back up here, I'll take just 1 second if I could. Having the training center local does help with, the hands-on training that's required for us to maintain all of our certifications, and a certain number of hours are required for ISO checks and those sorts of things. So I neglected to mention that, but I wanted to give them the opportunity. I took it. So,
Yeah, I'm really glad to see it in the CIP as well. There's no need to elaborate, but I'm really happy it's in there.
great, thank you.
Good afternoon, Doug.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Okay. Start with the money being in the budget for the riverfront crossing development. We've had this in the past. It's $150,000. It's to be used for studies to conceptualize things such as street designs and things like that. We have some interest in developing on the South Gilbert Street area, so I can see that this money would be used fairly soon in order to, get that all fitted together. The Climate Action Plan implementation money, we have consultant RFP due on the 20th, and this money here would help us implement any of the actions. The 150 is kind of a placeholder to have enough money in order to follow through with the recommendations that might come out of that process. Permitting software upgrade, the $600,000. I mentioned on Saturday that software was put in place in 1992. We no longer really have support for it, and the other thing that we're running into is that its interface with Microsoft Office or any upgrade to Microsoft Office is becoming problematic. It's time for it to be refreshed, and we need a new software system. And this is the core to the operation of everything that we do up there. We've been automated on a computer since 1992, so all of our data and all of our functions and all of our permitting and all the paperless stuff that we do run off this system. So it's pretty critical, as well as all of the activity that the inspectors do in the field with laptops. It's all coming back through this. So this is the core to our work functions, and it's important that it be upgraded and particularly supported.
Hey, Doug, before we move forward, so for all the prior work and all the prior documentation you have on the on the 1992 software, that will transfer over?
We'll have to do a data migration, and we intend to take a look at that. We believe that, yes, we can do that.
And that's within this cost?
We hope.
Okay.
We'll see.
Okay.
I think that this money, we're in a position, if it's approved, we would start looking at that this year. I think last time I did this, I guess it was 1992, it took us about a year plus to work through the process. So it takes a while to, find a computer software provider and then, work through how we make that transition, how we keep everything fresh.
Okay.
So it's not without some pain.
Right.
And then the City Hall remodel was moved to 2018. This is the area down where the MPO is located. We didn't complete the remodeling when we did the NDS. This is the one area. AmeriCorps is using that space now, and so they'll be done this year, probably. So we'll be in a position to look at freshening up that space and making it more habitable for the MPO after they've left. Any other questions?
I think I'd just like to observe that there are other CIP projects that are directly relate to the riverfront crossings development, like the extension of Kirkwood, the tunnel under the Riverside Bridge, the landscaping along Riverside Drive, or streetscaping.
Streetscaping.
Yeah, maybe some others, I don't know, but at least those three.
And the park.
Oh, yeah, the park.
It's a huge one, okay.
Yeah. Thanks, Doug.
Speaking of the park.
Speaking of,
Hi, Julie.
hi. All right, lots of projects here. First of all, 2 custodial accounts that we have. Parks Annual Improvement Fund. This is for our smaller projects throughout the city, throughout the parks. We did some work at Highland Park last summer, some at we did a shade structure over one of our playgrounds, a number of small shelter projects, those type of things come out of that. And then our Parks Annual ADA accessibility. We haven't been using a lot of that yet, but as you may remember, the Parks Master Plan is looking and inventorying everything throughout the park system, all of our facilities for accessibility issues. So that funding will go to knock things off the list after we get that plan finished. Frauenholz Miller Park. We just met this morning to talk about rebidding this. The first round of the bids came in fairly high. We have hopes that when we go out for rebid in February that we'll be able to get it accomplished. The changes that you'll see when we rebid it, some of this colored stamped concrete will be changed to just regular concrete. We will likely bid it with one shelter with a second shelter as an alternate. And then change a little bit of the sculpting of the ground so we don't have quite as much earthwork and sodding at the end. So hopefully that'll bring it back down. We'll end up with a very nice park by the end of the summer, this summer. Cemetery asphalt overlay, very simple, just keeping the roads in the cemetery passable as we have services and visitors at the cemeteries. Riverfront Crossing Parks, as we were just talking about, Phase 1 is under design, and you'll see Phase 1 here on the center. It includes largely the wetlands creation that was part of our flood mitigation grant. That's in the southern portion of the project. One thing we've added in is a trail connection here from the current trail along Highway 6 to Gilbert. So we will have that connection as well as a bridge at the 2nd Street alignment. So we'll have the trails through the park with 2 connections to the east and then the wetlands area. We have also gone ahead with some of the design work for what you see here as a parking circle and parking lot area. We may bid that as an alternate if funds are available, just to get more of the park done.
Julie, will that park have any edible landscaping that you're aware of? And secondly, are there any room for gardens in that particular location?
In Phase 1, not likely. Phase 1 is largely wetlands creation, so Phase 1 will focus on the wetlands. The master plan for the park shows a garden area up here towards the northern end. That's on ground that's not technically part of the park yet, okay. So the gardens might come later, and then edible landscaping would come as we develop the plans for the rest of the active areas of the park. So there's still lots of room for it, and most likely it will. It's just not in Phase 1.
Okay, thank you.
Emerald Ash Borer Response Plan. We have a lot of money sitting in this fund, so you'll see it decreases slightly. You may wonder why when we know Emerald Ash Borer is coming. We're learning a lot more about Emerald Ash Borer. If you remember a few years ago when it was first found, a city would have to go in and clear cut all their trees immediately. Luckily for us, it's a little bit different response now, and although we know we're going to lose most of our ash trees, it'll be drawn out over a number of years and not such an influx at one time. So we are preparing for that. The tree inventory will help us target areas where we have the most vulnerable ash trees, and then it'll be an ongoing process for a number of years.
Julie, on that particular item, I've been, over the last several months, really concerned about the kind of the state of our urban forest. Certainly, emerald ash borer will be a major factor. I would add to that just natural attrition. I know in our neighborhood we've lost a number of trees, and then I would also add to that. We have these glowing numbers in terms of development, and in some areas that development has resulted in significant tree loss, depending on where the development is. So one of my goals, one of my hopes, is we can ratchet up our urban forestry plan, and I don't know. What kind of budget should be allocated for it? But most of this is, in effect, tree planting, correct?
Correct. And it's an interesting fact we just learned, I think earlier this morning, of the early numbers of the tree inventory show that our tree canopy is about 33% of the city's covered in trees. And what we're learning is our goal should probably be around 40%. So the good news is we're not as far off as we might be, or many other cities. It'll also help us determine how quickly we're going to lose some of that canopy from exactly what you talked about.
Right.
So, it's definitely something we want to work towards over the next couple of years of replacing and adding more. This is an annual fund continuing connecting bike trails throughout the community. Hickory Hill Trail redesign and development. As you know, in 2016, we finished the master plan, which is what is shown here. The master plan came away with some very high priority items for the park, and those will be the things that we will be pursuing in 2017. And those are, the smallest of the three is the signage, so that as people get through the park, they won't get lost. Very small and nice signs, not overpowering anything in the park. And then bridge work and trail work, dealing with erosion issues, shoring up the trails, not paving any trails at this point, just making what's there better, realigning a few things just so that they are less prone to erosion and other issues.
Julie, which page are you on? It's not going in 35, okay. The intra-city bike trail, okay. I'm sorry.
535.
Yep.
Okay. So that work we hope to have done this summer. So you'll see a number of crews out working throughout Hickory Hill Park this summer.
When we talked about this a while back, we were talking about overall accessibility in some of the areas. Where do we stand on that? And I'm kind of alluding to a question I'm going to have later on page 531. Around park annual ADA accessibility improvements, because in my question, or my thought and in question, is that number's too low, and I don't know necessarily whether or not that was something that was discussed when we had that report about ADA compliance. I think that really, I don't know where Simon is, but I think that was around maybe more of the street level ramp things, and so it didn't necessarily talk or speak to parks. But are we thinking along those lines? Are we pushing along those lines as far as accessibility is concerned?
Sure, exactly. Right now, during the park master planning process, it's happening right now. We have consultants going through all of the park facilities and looking at accessibility issues. So we will have a prioritized list by next June of all of our, accessibility issues throughout the park. At Hickory Hill Park, the discussion was of the possibility of adding 2 smaller paved loops,
Right.
one by the Bloomington Street entrance and one by the 7th Street. Those were not considered to be in the top priority of the items for that park, in that there are other parks that have those paved accessible loops in them nearby. So you won't see any of that changing at Hickory Hill with this particular project, other than taking care of the bridges and the soft surface trails will make those more accessible than they are right now.
But the gravel is wheelchair accessible,
It
isn't
is.
it, when it's well maintained?
Yes,
Yeah.
it can be. So
Yes.
there is considered, we don't have everything in Hickory Hill to be under 5% slopes and that sort of thing. That's just not possible in a park like that.
Yep.
And generally, we look at accessibility throughout the entire system, and if there are other similar experiences that people can access nearby, we can do that
But
too.
going back to that, again, I'm jumping ahead at the park annual accessibility improvements. Is there enough money in that particular fund to speak to what you just talked about?
Probably not. It just depends on how much we want to bite off each year.
Okay.
We
So
will-
it's consideration annually, and that may change?
Annual,
Okay.
yes, yeah. And like I said, at the end of this park master plan, we'll have a better assessment of that.
And there will likely be some projects identified through that master plan process that will come back as specific standalone projects. For instance, Julie will get to one shortly that is for recreation center improvements, which came out of our previous ADA audit of the facilities. So once we have that master plan in place, there will likely be some larger projects that are identified that'll come back in future years' budgets.
Highway 1 trail, this is just a very small portion of trail. Sustainable roadway vegetation management, this is an annual program where we are working towards changing the plantings along a number of our roadways to more sustainable choices. The money in the next year will be used primarily for the medians on Washington Street farther east than what we did last summer. And then Highway 1, Sunset to the east of, I think it's Hawks Ridge is the name of the street out there. We'll be working at some new plantings in those areas.
Can I just say, too, I think that's a great program, too. I've really liked what you've done. I think it's Highway 6, too. Haven't you done some of that, too?
Did I say the wrong one? Yeah.
Yeah, so it's great work on that. DOT's done a lot of stuff on that, too.
Another small portion of Trail Highway 6, Sycamore to Heinz.
Can you stay with that for a second? So I wasn't clear before about which side of Highway 6 the trail was going to be located on. I take it's on the south side. And crossings would be, I'm having trouble reading this with my glasses. The crossings of Highway 6 would be where?
Yeah, good afternoon. To answer those questions, I'm not 100% sure which side the trail would be on now. It hasn't been designed. I would guess the south side because that's where the existing trail closer to Highway 1 exists. So I think it would be desirable to have it on the south side, but that would come through the design process. Crossings to be determined as well. We do know, though, that one major crossing that would be advantageous is at First Avenue. Part of that would be to connect to the new road diet along First Avenue as well, so to get some good connectivity regionally and, of course, throughout Iowa City as well.
Well, I've heard over the past few years that there are a fairly substantial number of people who walk to work.
Right.
And it would be good for them to have a sidewalk
Right.
that enables them to do it safely.
I agree. And in fact, we actually skip a portion from what exists now towards Highway 1 to get to this portion for that very reason. Hollywood Boulevard actually creates a nice connection that can work temporarily until we come back and fill in that portion back to Broadway to the west.
Thanks.
Thank you.
I'd have to show at least one video. So Willow Creek Park is next. We just got this video as well.
Here's the trailer.
Yeah, it's just a small, this project is some creek restoration, but then also replacement of this playground that you see. It's an older playground and shelter at Willow Creek Park. You can see it's one of the older styles. So that's all I'll show of the video, but that's that particular project. Oops.
Julie, was it Jack Brooks that prepared the video you showed us Saturday?
No,
You
he
mean
didn't.
Oh, Saturday, yeah.
Yes,
the famous Jack Brooks sitting over here
he
behind the
did,
camera?
and
right
wasn't
now?
that a great video? So that's Willow Creek. Annual rec center improvement funds, as I mentioned during the operating budget, one of our largest customer service issues is just the age of these two buildings and the continual, we have systems breaking down quite regularly. So this fund allows us to continue working on plumbing, electrical, a number of things throughout the buildings. Upgrading the building controls, this has to do with the HVAC systems, getting them all to talk with each other and be controlled by one computer program. At the moment, a lot of our HVAC systems are controlled by the old green screen DOS programs, believe it or not. Yes, I saw that look. So this will get us updated and get them all coordinated with each other. Rec Center lobby remodel, we have RFQ out to choose architects that are actually due today for this project. Looks at really three things. In the lower level of the Rec Center, there's 2 single stall restrooms that we're going to look at making more accessible using probably some of the ADA funds as well. The stairway between the 2 levels of the Rec Center has ADA compliance issues, so that will be part of the project. And then reworking the upper level, the administrative front area of the administrative offices.
When was the last time that this was fully remodeled? Has it been since it was, has it ever been fully remodeled?
It's been pieceworked here and there, I think.
It's never had a full, okay.
I don't think so. Yeah.
The pedestrian mall reconstruction, this will be the piece along Dubuque Street from Washington Street to the south, and then College Street between Lynn and Clinton. Basically be building face-to-building face replacement of the pavement. We'll have new furnishings, utility work will be done, water main replacement, storm sewer addition or upgrade. And then the look itself, the existing planters, as far as the limestone planters, will stay in place, but we'll add footings and do some maintenance on those to get those to hold together. And then we'll also be looking at kiosk upgrades and crossing of Clinton Street, of College Street at Clinton will also be upgraded or fixed, similar to what we have done at Washington and Clinton.
Hey, Ron, before we move forward, what is the impact, particularly of businesses along, I mean, we had the same conversation around Washington Street. Have we had those discussions yet? Will those discussions be in the future? Because, I mean, while, I really appreciate the Washington Street project, it was really difficult to get around. I think that led to some of the things that we heard about at the city council level. I'm thinking about the businesses that are impacted there. Partially, I'm thinking about the yogurt stand that's right there, but there's other businesses that other people go to. And so what are are we contemplating that? Is that just going to be one entire reconstruction, or is it going to be phased in any particular way?
I imagine that we will do it the same way we did Washington Street. We're just in the beginning process of kind of getting into that design, but we will definitely have outreach with business owners in those areas. I will definitely have to have a phased project. It won't be a situation where we'll just be able to close the whole block and be able to move forward. So we'll have to phase it.
There is a meeting Thursday, I believe, 2 different meetings at 9:30 and 2:30 at the library discussing the upcoming construction, so.
Right. Creekside Park redevelopment, we actually kicked this project off for design this morning. We're looking at a park that has gotten a number of extra parcels of land due to flood buyouts, so we're looking at options for what can be done with the extra land and reworking the older shelter and playground. Look to have neighborhood meetings probably end of March, we talked about this morning. Cardigan Park development, this is one of the newer parks far on the east side down Court Street, almost to Taft, the gravel road on the east side of town. Small park in the middle of a number of condo units. We are looking at paths and a small playground shelter. Looks like we will actually put the playground in this summer using some of the open space, neighborhood open space funds that are available for that district with the rest of the park development in 2018.
One of my sons used to live in one of the townhouses adjacent to that forthcoming park. And when I would visit him, I kept thinking, wow, this will be a terrific park if it's developed well and really enhance that cluster of houses that's bounded. So I'm really looking forward to seeing this park being put in place.
Yeah, I would say, from what I've seen over the last several years, this is one of the better site plans that's been developed. It has very good circulation. It has numerous gathering spaces at all different scales, the center green and then the smaller areas. I would say the one thing that puzzled me when I looked at this plan were the parking bays.
They're already there.
And they're already there. And I kind of,
you get all three types of parking.
I have no idea what the point of this.
I don't know, but there's 3 different types on 3 different sides.
We're trying to promote walkability, and yet we've cut out parkland basically to provide parking when I would assume the street parking would have been more than adequate to have served both the housing and the park, but it's there. So, but I do think the plan is really coming together well.
It's a thing, John. It's a thing. This is a phrase I'm hearing over and over again now. It's a thing.
It's a good thing. Robert A. Lee ADA improvements. Same thing we talked about on the other rec center too. There's a number of improvements just to make it more accessible. The lift to the swimming pool. These are the 2 restrooms I talked about. We look to make those both 2 unisex restrooms that are more serviceable than what you find there right now.
What about the elevator? Or there's something there that's something. I can't remember what it is right now, but there's something with it's either the elevator or the turn to get into the elevator or something in that central area right before the steps. Maybe I have to check it out today.
There's an extra set of doors there. It might be upstairs you're thinking. The elevator kind of comes into an alcove
Maybe that's
Upstairs.
it.
Yeah, this won't address that. That would be very expensive to change that. Mercer Park Aquatics Center pool improvements, competition pool used by City High School. This would look in the future to replacing things like the bulkhead, the dive blocks, the chair, those kind of, some of the tile work around the outside of the pool. It's just aging. In order for it to remain relevant for competitions, we'll need to continue to upgrade it occasionally. Mercer Park Ball Diamond, number 4. This is in one of the further out years. Not sure why, but this ball field was configured the opposite of the other ones at Mercer Park, so we get complaints about the sunlight at certain times, and it's just not used as much. So the idea is to flip it around and make it so it fits in with the rest of the ball fields at the site. West Side Park Development, this is a placeholder for as we finish our park master plan. We know that there's growth on the west side. We have some parcels of land that are undeveloped out there. This would look at what kind of services and facilities are needed and allow us to do some more park development in that area. And the cemetery shop roof replacement, just simply so it doesn't leak. Terry Trueblood, unfortunately, I did not have a picture of the parking lot. We have pictures of everything else fun going on out there, and that's great. The bad part is when you go out to have fun and you can't find a parking space during the summer months especially. It would be a further addition of parking areas. This could change depending on what happens with the Public Works site.
How many spaces are you talking about adding?
It says 100 in the report.
I believe 100. So like in the mornings, when we,
Okay.
for instance, when there's a 5K event out there and something else, parking is just really difficult, so.
Okay.
Yeah,
Julie, that was contemplated in the master plan, the expansion of parking?
it was,
Yeah.
yeah.
Is there any possibility, I don't know what the typical level of parking is in that park, but could it be done as overflow parking, meaning, maybe not paved to the full extent?
We would certainly look at that, and as I was just about to say, we're also looking at possibilities with the new public works facility happens across the street. Are there ways that we can cross park over there?
How many acres will that be? How many acres of the parking expansion will that be?
Not much. I don't have an exact number, but it would add on to the parking lots as you see them now. So I think essentially if you go out there on a really busy summer day, it would be all the areas where people are parking on the grass right now.
Well, it's kind of like, I guess John was thinking. I was thinking about the parking that's available just across this, just across more, what's it called?
Callister.
Callister, thank you. And about how it would be better to be able to use that instead of building more parking space directly on the park site, if possible. I don't want to push it too hard, but I think that'd be a
Yeah, and we would certainly look at all of
wiser,
those.
more efficient way to do things if we can do it.
I ran across a concept that I'm hoping can help inform us on all these issues as they relate to budget, and it would be the minimum viable project. That we really look at very critically at our capital improvement projects to make sure we don't gild the lily. We basically do what's essential to meeting whatever programmatic needs we've identified. And because the reason is simple, we have more capital need than we have funds to cover. So I feel we really need to be consistent on that because we just don't have enough money. So I think we need to be as cost effective as possible with whatever we do. And this kind of triggers that in my mind is, do we really need to pave more parkland if in fact there are other ways we can solve that?
So is there going to be an asterisk by this?
It sounds like it.
It's in, because I want it to be highlighted, because especially if we're having the conversation. I know y'all will be thinking about it, but we may not as we're having the conversation around the public works.
Yeah, it's, this is programmed to be in year 2021,
Right.
so you're going to have several more bites at the apple, so to speak. And as Julie alluded to, hopefully the public works phase 1 goes well before this, and during that design phase, we'll look at overflow parking opportunities down there. and then we'll have 3 or 4, more years of experience there. I think the big problem is it's become a real hotspot for these charity walks and runs, and you combine one of those with a wedding or another special event, and you get people parking in the grass, and then Julie's got her maintenance staff out there for the next week trying to repair the turf out there that's been torn up. So, it's not going to happen next year, so there'll be plenty more time to discuss it.
Next project, Fair Meadows Playground and Shelter. This park close to Grant Wood Elementary. So Grant Wood has a fairly new playground. What we're asking here is to replace the aging playground with an area specifically targeted to younger children, to preschool age. We have a number of in-home daycares nearby that use this park, and replace the shelter at this park. Weatherby bathroom and shelter upgrades. As you know, we have the new sport court coming in soon with some CDBG and Wellmark funds. This would look to upgrade or replace the shelter and the playground that are there. They're aging, and in a few years from now, it'll be time to replace those.
When was that shelter? How old is that shelter? Do you know?
I don't recall.
Yeah, the mural is fairly new. It's within the last probably 5 years, I think. But the shelter itself, I think, is quite a bit older. Shelter and restrooms there.
Weatherby's only about 10 or 15 years old, I think, so maybe 15 at the max.
We can find that out and report that back to you, yeah.
And then Shattuck Green Park upgrade, we're looking at some upgrades to this park to help with the garden area. So it'd be the first kind of park development that we've done around the actual garden. It's a very popular garden area, and this would likely provide a restroom, small shelter, with some outdoor washing stations or some different things for the people using the community gardens there to have available.
Excellent. Thank you, Julie.
So basically, the only CIP project that the police are asking for is carpet and cabinet replacement. And right now, they have rolled carpet on the first and second floors, and they're looking at putting in carpet squares, similar to what we have in this space here. The cabinets are, what you can see, some of them are damaged, but also what you can't see on the other side of the report writing room is that the cabinets used to house VHS tapes, which they no longer use, and so there's a lot of reworking to work with curtain operations. Anything else?
That was easy. Yeah, I hope you like your new job, Kumi.
Oh, I'm getting there.
We're about halfway through the presentation. I don't know if people want to take a break or if want to forge on. So,
Arthur.
All right, perfect.
Before you start, I want to ask if it would be all right for me to eat my lunch. I brought it with me. Would anybody take offense?
What do you have?
Is it
TV's
crunchy?
Yeah,
So,
well, I got
sure.
some
as long as you're
chips.
comfortable, the
The
TV's
zombie
on.
Somebody
there.
mentioned an apple. I got one of those.
Just don't crunch too loud.
Yeah.
That's right.
Have a drink or
Great.
something.
Thanks.
All right, so the next section is the Public Works projects, page 549 in the budget book.
All right, on to the fun stuff. Kicking things off here, the Normandy Drive Storm Sewer Replacement Project. This one will look at doing a couple of things. First, we'll be making some repairs to existing storm sewer in this area. The second thing will be to modify the existing structure and make some improvements there that will allow for easier and more efficient pumping when it's required. During flood events, this is a location where we are often install pumps to address issues in the area, and so this would make it sort of a way to reuse existing pumps in a more efficient manner. The Stevens Drive Storm Sewer Improvements, this is a similar project. Again, this is, I guess, more or less the same thing, only in a different location. Again, you're looking at making some repairs to the existing storm sewer in the area and then making it so that we can, again, use those existing pumps during flood events. The annual stormwater improvements project, this is $240,000 annually, and what it looks to do is basically make repairs, improvements for the existing stormwater system. It could be anything from replacing or repairing intakes, repairs to storm sewer, drainage ways, that kind of stuff. And again, locations, projects, that kind of stuff varies year to year. A lot of it just depends on issues that come up and needs that are there for those facilities.
Relating to stormwater, are we going to be having any bioswale type projects at all in the foreseeable future? I'm thinking, for example, in front of Hampshire, I love what they've done in terms of sort of the natural stormwater management. Is that something that we see ourselves adopting in the future?
I don't think at this time we have any that are in the, I guess, final design phase, but it's something that we've been working with consultants to look at. Are there locations where they make sense? Are there locations where it's something that we can fit into the project and be able to maintain?
Okay.
The Lower Muscatine area storm sewer improvements. A few years ago, we reconstructed Lower Muscatine Road, and as part of that project, we addressed the intakes and storm sewer capacity for Lower Muscatine Road. Unfortunately, the surrounding neighborhood has very little to none as far as storm sewer, and so what happens during heavier rain events is that water comes rushing down those side streets onto Lower Muscatine and floods Lower Muscatine. And the issue really has to do with intakes and getting that water into the storm sewer. They're just not able to keep up, and so the storm sewer may have capacity, but we just can't get the water into it fast enough. So what this looks to do is really kind of go a block or so on some of these side streets into the neighborhood and install intakes to help catch that water before it gets to Lower Muscatine where it causes that flooding.
How'd you take the picture?
What's that?
How'd you take the picture?
I was in a car. It's right, that one's actually at Sycamore Street and DeForest. So the water gets going pretty good during the heavier rain events.
There's one, it's not as nearly as extreme as what seems to be happening on Lower Muscatine, but at Gilbert and Market, over near where I live, that in a heavy rain tends to flood. I don't know if you're familiar with the conditions there, but it seems, Jim, do you know what I'm talking about?
And that is, when we get into the older areas of town where we're using a different design standard, it's not uncommon to have those situations come up, where we do have the overland flow going versus being able to get into a pipe and going underground. So, those are, as we look at the overall sub-basins in our community, we'll be looking at making improvements in those areas also.
Yeah, that's a fairly busy intersection, so things can break down.
Definitely, yep. The next project is the Public Works facility. We appreciate you all coming out and doing the tour and visiting things. This project is in the budget book. It's a $12 million project. Multiple funding sources to try to pull this thing together and really, as we work our way through the concepting of this project in the first phase, which will be the streets building, bringing water distribution down, and then traffic engineering, we'll be looking at, can we do this project at less than 12 million, obviously. We are looking at 1.1 million out of the equipment fund. We have a $2.5 million general fund investment. The project that Chief Greer talked about earlier is shown as a $1.4 million investment in the site. And then we're looking at a loan from the landfill for $2.5 million. So, that it's just showing that we have multiple projects that we're trying to bring through, and the outlier that is the sale of the land that we'll be vacating, and we show that as $1 million. We think that's a good estimate, but we won't know until we put it on the market. So, this project will be pulling together those areas, also looking at the fire training tower, and then also storage for some other departments also. Parks is looking at trying to find a place to store some materials. It'll be a challenging project as far as funding goes, but we're excited to be able to move into a phase 1 of our public works facility.
When would that property be sold? Because you're still going to have transit located on there, aren't you?
Right. So what we would be looking at is so we would be able to vacate basically the corner property. So, we would move
It's the most valuable property.
Right, and that exactly. And so any equipment would actually still be on that site also. So our fleet maintenance building would still be there. So everything to the east of that building would stay in place. But we would have the refuse operations moved to the existing water distribution building, and that would be able to allow us to vacate that corner.
Thanks.
All right, so moving on to the Riverside Drive area, and the next 3 projects will actually be kind of combined into a single project, but they're 3 separate projects in the CIP. The first one being the Riverside Drive pedestrian tunnel, and this would look to install a new pedestrian tunnel under the Iowa Interstate Railroad on the west side of Riverside Drive, south of Myrtle and north of Benton. And what this would do is it would look to create a pedestrian corridor on the west side, especially with the new come and go, the new apartment building there, and potential redevelopment there at the Myrtle intersection. This would certainly be a welcome addition for pedestrians in this area. The next project is the Riverside Drive streetscape improvements. We completed our master plan recently for the Riverside Drive corridor and the streetscape improvements. This project would include a couple different phases of that. The first one being the section, again, on the west side of Riverside Drive, as well as the north side of Benton Street. So that would be the areas there on both sides of the come and go, as well as in front of the apartment building, and then would also extend up to the Myrtle Avenue intersection, as well as potentially some stuff on the east side that would provide a connection to the Iowa River Trail. So all of that would be included kind of in that first phase. The next phase would be in 2018 and would really focus at the Benton Street and Riverside Drive intersection. The reason for that is it'll be coming up here shortly, but the DOT is looking at doing an overlay project, so we'll be doing a joint project with them. And so with that, they take a look at those curb ramps. It just makes sense to do that at the same time.
What kind of overlay project will they be doing?
So the overlay project will be going from essentially Rocky Shore down to Sturgis Corner, and they'll be doing an asphalt overlay. And as part of that, they look at curb ramps for ADA requirements, that kind of stuff. So that'll, like I said, it'll be coming up a little bit later as well.
Go ahead, Pauline.
I'm curious about the signalization at Myrtle Avenue. What type of signalization are you
Perfect.
talking about? The what?
Said perfect segue. That's the next project.
Oh, okay.
So,
Oh, sorry.
Yep.
Just a quick question on the tunnel. How far back from the street do you I know the design work isn't necessarily done yet, but ballpark of how far back that's going to be from the actual street?
I would say we're probably looking at 20 feet, maybe from the street in that neighborhood.
Okay.
It's set back from the normal sidewalk location some.
So basically have a jog in the sidewalk to get through
Correct.
the tunnel and
Yep.
back out. Okay, thank you.
So then the next project here is the Myrtle Riverside intersection signalization project. And what this would look at, originally we had sort of envisioned a hawk signal at this intersection, which would really focus for pedestrians in kind of looking at traffic volumes and safety aspects and how this would operate. I think we're looking now at potentially full signalization, so kind of a standard traffic signal. I don't think that that's necessarily set in stone at this point. That's, I think we're heading to design, so that would be something that we would look at as part of that design. The intersection project will include, like I mentioned, signalization. It'll also include some pedestrian or some streetscape elements. And again, this would look at potentially the use of some plantings, street trees in the area. There is also the potential maybe for some pavers near the pedestrian ramp areas, but all that's yet to be designed, so we'll work through that during the design process.
So what was the rationale between this particular intersection getting signalized? Because to me, it seems like it's close. So as soon as I leave from the Benton, thank you, street intersection, I'm literally stopping at the next intersection, and there's another one maybe another 30 seconds down the road. And I'm trying to figure out also, what are you walking to on the other side?
And really, I think it has to do with pedestrians, is really where the signalization comes from. As far as, you know, I think as part of the master plan, that was one of the big findings of that study, was that there is a need for a crossing here, a safe crossing for pedestrians. I think a part of it just has to do with the nature of people, and you know, you may be able to go to Benton, but it's not the shortest path, and so you probably won't. Maybe not you personally, but people in general.
Also, going north from Myrtle, there is a sidewalk on the east side, isn't there?
Yes.
Right.
Not on the west.
Right, and there's none on the west, and that's university property, so there's probably never going to be
huge.
one on the west. So I think it's
Yeah.
important to have a crossing at Myrtle so that people who live up the hill in those apartments, if you got students
Especially,
who
yeah.
are, you know, headed downtown campus and aren't going to cut through the parking lots to get to the buses over by the law building, they can get down there and across the street. And in summertime, you know, you've
There's
got.
no sidewalk on the other side?
No, not on the west side, not going north.
This project, I think, is really anticipating a change in use along this corridor too. And we saw the Kevin Hannock project bring a lot more residential density. You guys approved a comprehensive plan change anticipating some denser residential development just west of the Come and Go property. This Come and Go property that's pictured here is vacant. It's likely that you'll see a request sometime down the road for a project that includes residential units on there. And of course, the heavy pedestrian traffic flow with all these new units is going to be to the campus. And so it's how to get people across. And you could hope that people cross at Benton, but again, with campus up there, the library, wellness center, they're not going to go Benton over to Clinton and up. They're going to want to shoot through this area, and there's just not good, safe pedestrian crossings on this corridor.
Is that university property that's on that side?
On the west side,
West
yes.
side.
And this road would be a bad candidate for a road diet because of the traffic volume. So it's really the only way to get them safely across, yeah.
It just seems like it's more kind of an anticipatory plan, like anticipating the increased pedestrian traffic, because at this point now, I drive that road quite a bit, and it doesn't seem like there are many people at that intersection waiting to pull out into it or to walk or to bike across. So is
Yeah,
that,
the street's going to be changing.
right,
Yeah,
right. So it's anticipating that possibility.
So I know it's a real bear to try to cross Riverside on a bike from the bike trail, and then go up the hill, you know, toward Mennonite Church or something like that, or to try to do it on foot.
And Jason, maybe you can explain what a hawk signal is, and I know you think that we may be moving off of that, but that's some of the consideration that'll go into the design work that's being done.
Yeah, and I think really what a hawk signal is it's more on a pedestrian scale. You see them a lot of times at mid-block crossings, and what it does is it's essentially kind of a flashing signal that alerts drivers to stop so that pedestrians can cross. You don't see them quite as much at intersections, which is why I think we were heading in the direction potentially of a full signal. Maybe you have anything to add?
Yeah, no, that's all accurate. I just wanted to throw in one more thing, is that rather than be anticipatory, this signal actually is warranted now regardless of pedestrians, because there's actually a relatively large number of collisions at the intersection. As traffic increases in the corridor, like Jeff mentioned, because of the development that has and will be likely approved, it's only become more warranted. So I think regardless of the pedestrian issue, which is the most important issue I think now, this signal is probably going to be necessary in the very near future. It's already warranted, but will
Yeah, and
become more necessary.
you're using that word warranted in a
Right.
pretty precise technical way, right? Having to
Right,
do with
correct.
DOT
Yeah,
standards.
we've actually gone through and done the study, and both the hawk signal and the full traffic signal are warranted today. So, like Jason said, it makes sense to probably go down the path of full signalization rather than throw money at a hawk signal, come back later and find out we need the full signal. Something else to mention too is hawk signals are relatively expensive, in the neighborhood of $80,000 to $100,000. A full signal may only be $200,000. So it sort of makes sense, if we think we're going to need it, to go ahead and kind of do the full design.
Is it possible with that full signalization to have it designed such that it stays green on Riverside Drive all the time unless traffic coming down Myrtle triggers it?
And as part of our signals, we have detection, and so there would be ways to set up the timing such that if that's what we wanted to do, then we could do that.
Okay, thank you.
Is there a hawk signal in East Village in Des Moines? I was there not too long ago, and I believe I saw one. I don't know if
Yeah, I'm not real familiar with Des Moines, but I know there's several in Des Moines. They have 6 or 7 of them now, and I believe Cedar Rapids has a few. But again, those are mostly at locations where they're not a full intersection.
Yeah,
it might be mid-block, and that's usually a better location for a hawk signal.
And Susan really answered, I guess, I would say complaint, but my issue with it. Again, safety being a part of it. I'm not trying to say I'm the unsafe person. But my issue is that.
You drive.
Anyways, I hope that's not on record. But on Highway 1, I hear multiple complaints about that signalization, and this one's vastly closer. I mean, it's literally. I could run that. In literally 30 seconds, and so I feel like that's problematic. If it's work with you, Susan. I said 45, maybe to a minute and a half. But anyways, the point is that I don't want that to be another issue or complaint. If we are being foreseeable with it, and we can make some of those changes.
Yeah, if it's just triggered by traffic coming down Myrtle, then that
Right.
would be good.
All right, the next one, the West Riverbank Stabilization and Trail Project. This one has money in 2017 and 2019. 2017, what this would really look to do is help address a lot of erosion, some real severe erosion that's starting to occur just north of Highway 6. And so what that money would do is to kind of address those immediate needs. There's been some concern, I know, from the property owners, especially with that building there near the river. They have some concerns about the ongoing erosion. And so that would look to address that. The money available in 2019 would look to install a trail in this stretch between Benton Street and Highway 6. It would also look to expand kind of that bank stabilization, again, looking to make sure that we aren't losing any more riverbank. There will be some areas that would likely have to be filled in somewhat, again, just to kind of reclaim some of that area. But that would then look to put a trail on top of that, which could then be extended to the south in the future. The Iowa City Gateway project, I won't spend too much time on this. I think everyone's been involved with this for quite a while now. Construction is ongoing. It began here in, I guess, last year now in 2016. We're on schedule to complete the project in 2018. Just kind of a high level, a lot of the goals of the project really were to elevate Dubuque Street, new Park Road Bridge, new trunk sewer along this corridor, along with some other improvements. But that one is ongoing. The annual traffic signal projects, this one is $150,000 annually, and it looks to repair, replace, or install new traffic signals. It's kind of as needed, so it could be any number of things, whether it's an existing signal that needs some work or locations where we feel a new traffic signal is needed. I guess just kind of as an estimate, that $150,000 is probably good for one traffic signal.
Speaking about, kind of walkability and just overall accessibility, have we looked at expanding the options for ADA compliance? And so I don't remember if it was a presentation we had here or a presentation I've had somewhere else where it talked about for individuals that are legally blind, being able to, have beeps, or I know that we have some of that, I don't want to say permeated, but kind of the dotted pavement to allow for individuals to know when they're coming up to an intersection. But there are some other things more advanced, so for lack of a better word, that were incorporated or discussed, and I can't remember where that was. Is that a part of any type of enhancement that we'll be doing? I think, again, and it depends on the area too. I mean,
And I think those are discussions that are ongoing. You know, I think you're alluding to the truncated domes, which are required at all pedestrian crossing, street crossings. So those are going in at all new locations. The audible pedestrian signals, there's kind of an ongoing discussion on where those should be included. Currently, they're not required. There's some discussion that they may be in the future. So we're kind of working through that. Where we're at right now, I think, is that we're setting up our signals so that those could be changed out if that's what we want to do in locations where there are high pedestrian counts, such as downtown, those kind of areas. We're going ahead and installing those. They don't come without a cost. They are pretty pricey. I think they're in the neighborhood of about $10,000 an intersection to install those. So there's certainly a cost there, and it's kind of weighing those factors. You know, if you get into situations where you put them in residential areas, you're often can expect some complaints, again, because they're always going. So there's a number of factors that we consider, but there is an ongoing discussion on including those.
Your work session at your next meeting, you're going to talk about the Dubuque and Lynn Street intersections with Washington. And one of the decision-making criteria we looked at was the audible notifications at those, and that helped lead us to our decision to replace those signals. And you're going to take that up. But in those areas where there's high pedestrian movements, I think our intention is to look at those audible notification systems at those intersections.
The traffic calming project, this one, it looks at installing traffic calming elements. Again, and that's kind of at the end of that neighborhood process of selecting locations and the actual improvements that are to be installed. These are locations throughout the city, and again, depending on neighborhood interest and where those show up at. This does include $25,000 in 2017 and then drops down to $15,000 annually. That has to do with sort of what we spend on traffic calming. And so there's currently a balance in that project, and so there's the ability to cut back until we get to a point where we're needing more funding. One thing I wanted to note is there has been interest in a north side traffic calming project. There is sufficient balance in that project to do that type of project. So I think that there's money for that wouldn't necessarily be part of that annual allotment for this project.
If I could jump in on that one real quick. Part of the other rationale for lowering the traffic calming annual funding to $15,000, one, we were doing all that we could with the road use tax dollars to shift more to the resurfacing program. And so you'll see a couple of these annual line items go down a little bit. You'll see the resurfacing line go up. And also based on your conversations about traffic calming several months ago, we are going to put a much heavier emphasis on the lower cost solutions, which is the striping, the street tree planting, as opposed to the speed humps, which tend to be more expensive. So we felt comfortable dialing back this budget a little bit.
I guess I'd just like to highlight one thing. I look at that speed bump where that gray sedan is or that minivan is, and this conversation we've had with Jeff Speck about the roads being too wide. So I think we have the roads being too wide, cars go too fast, and then we have additional cost to get the bumps in to slow the traffic down. That would be something in the future that I really want to look at, the standards that we're using in terms of how wide we're making these roads. Of course, it would be pursuant to the national standards, but there are different. I think NACDO is one that we've talked about, but I think this illustrates it pretty well.
Another comment I would make, since we are kind of overarching, what we're talking about is revenues and expenditures, is my hope on the north side traffic calming is when we'll be looking at street parking as a part of the form-based code up there, is that if we were to develop a parking benefit district, in other words, permit parking in the north side, but attach a fee to it, most of the parking on the street is residents from outside the neighborhood commuting in, parking for free and then taking Gambus or walking downtown. If we can implement a parking benefit district and keep the funds minus whatever costs are involved in managing the program, that could provide a funding source for traffic calming as well as any other public benefits that could follow. But the benefit of that, of course, is we're creating a revenue stream apart from the general fund. It's not something that we would draw down from. It's something generated within the neighborhood itself. So that's something I'm hoping we can explore as we move forward with that study.
Well, I would definitely agree. It's something we should explore.
Mm-hmm.
The next project is over with paving and sidewalks, and this is an account that for those locations for new streets or new sidewalks where with paving, or if we are asking for wider sidewalk in those locations, the city typically pays the difference between kind of the standard and the wider width. So this is funding for those locations.
The wider width sidewalks, are those able to, can you bike on those or not? On the wider width sidewalks?
I believe you're allowed to.
You're allowed to,
Yes.
okay.
The curb ramp ADA project, this looks to replace or install curb ramps in locations throughout the city. Typically, what we focus on primarily are those locations where there are no curb ramps, where there's a need for connectivity or sidewalk connections and there aren't existing ramps. We do also look at locations where there are ramps, but they don't meet current ADA guidelines. So those may be locations where there aren't truncated domes, or there's a ramp, but it's really steep and hard to navigate. So those types of locations are what we would be looking at. You can see here, this is a sort of a screenshot of our GIS database that shows curb ramp locations. The green ones are those that meet current ADA guidelines. The red ones don't. That's not to say that there's not a ramp or that it's not usable, but it doesn't meet some aspect of those guidelines. So it could be a ramp, for example, that is perfectly usable but doesn't have the truncated domes, and then that would be one that would be marked for, I guess, future replacement at some point.
Jason, are these funds, are the funds pulled out of this, are the dollars pulled out of this project or this fund when we're doing street reconstruction, and we're doing the ramps then, or does that come out of the dollars for that street project?
Typically, those come out of the dollars for that street project.
Okay, so this would be in addition
this would be in
to
addition.
anything that we're doing with construction or reconstruction?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Brick street repairs, this is approximately $20,000 annually. And what this is for is, again, repairs to existing brick streets. With the dollar amounts that are in there annually, these really are focused on small sort of point repairs. You're not going to be able to replace, blocks of brick streets with this money. So it's really focused on those small repairs that are in immediate need. The annual pavement rehabilitation project, this has approximately $1.5 million in 2017, and you can see that it increases about $100,000 each year after that. This focuses on a couple different methods, I guess, for pavement rehabilitation. The biggest one being asphalt overlay, so that's kind of the big ticket item typically for the rehabilitation project. It will also include concrete patching, new curb and gutter replacement, crack sealing, chip seal, those kinds of things. The projects that occur during the year will vary. We try and include different types of projects, and also to spread those out throughout the city so that we're hitting different areas and we're not focusing solely on one part of town. One thing I wanted to mention is it also includes curb ramps. You can see a picture here of curb ramp replacement, and so those areas where we go through and overlay through the crosswalks, we take a look at the curb ramps and replace those if needed.
Jason, what is the standard for the truncated domes? Or is that a state standard?
Well, it comes from the federal level, and it works its way down through the state. So the state DOT kind of has their guidelines for what's required, but it's based off of federal requirements. Underground electrical facilities. This is a project that really it's a fund for looking at relocating overhead electrical facilities underground. Typically, these are in areas where there's other projects that are going on, whether it's private development or public projects, where utilities would need to relocate. And typically what we're required to do, or what we end up doing, is paying for the difference between what it would cost them to relocate it aerial in another location and to relocate it underground. I guess I wanted to note real quick too, some previous examples of that were Lower Muscatine Road, First Avenue, and currently on Dubuque Street are some locations that have been done or are in the process of being done. And we're looking at the Riverfront Crossings Park and Gilbert Street corridors as upcoming ones.
Jason, I'd just like to mention that yesterday, I guess, I drove again on the First Avenue overpass, underpass, whatever it's actually called. And I just want to praise the staff and the contractor for the job they did. It really seems to be to have turned out really well. And I know there's a little landscaping that has to be done yet, but so I just want to convey
It
that.
had minimal effect on the businesses. I've talked to quite a few businesses that said that, you know, usually with a project like that, it shuts things down, but we kept that lane open pretty much all but a week or so, and it really helped them out.
Good.
And I'll quickly say, only for this particular project, so don't quote me, that the one lane is currently working for this particular project. Only. So far. So far.
The annual complete streets improvements, this is funding that's really kind of a holding place for projects that come up. You know, this can be a variety of things. It could be 4-lane to 3-lane conversion. It could be bike lanes. Just those type of complete streets projects is what this funding would be for. One thing that we're looking to include in this would be implementing the bike master plan. So once that's complete, this would be possibly some funding to help implement some of those projects. The sidewalk infill program, this is a program that looks to install sidewalk in those locations that currently don't have sidewalk. What we really try to focus on are those areas where there's a gap. So it wouldn't necessarily be extending sidewalk from its current end just to end in another location. We're looking for those areas where we can connect to sidewalk on both ends and really create some connectivity with the program.
That one's completed.
Yeah.
Not very well.
You recognize that, huh?
Oh, yeah, my neck of the woods.
Sidewalk to
I
nowhere.
wouldn't have cared if they didn't do it, but.
I walk in the street most of the time anyway.
The Burlington and Madison intersection improvements. So this is a project that looks at improvements for not only vehicles but also pedestrians and bicycles at the intersection of Burlington and Madison, as well as potentially some improvements along Burlington Street. Another thing that would be looked at in including in this project would be some utility work, but also potentially the 4-lane to 3-lane conversion along Madison Street would be included with this project. You know, originally this project included medians on Burlington Street. I think it's been long enough now that we're going to kind of take a look at that and see if that's still something we want to do. So that may or may not change, but it's something that we'll take a look at. I also wanted to mention, you know, this includes about $500,000 in traffic safety money, as well as about $1 million of STP money included in this project. One other thing I forgot to mention too, you know, kind of it seemed to be kind of the sister project of this one was the Burlington and Clinton intersection project. That one is scheduled, or is currently finishing up design and should be construction this year as well. The annual railroad crossings, this is kind of a holding fund for those locations where we need to make improvements to railroad crossings. Typically, the city's on the hook to make those repairs when it comes to pavement, and so that's kind of as needed and just, again, as issues arise. American Legion Road, so this is the reconstruction of American Legion Road from Scott Boulevard to Taft Avenue. And it looks to improve it from the current rural cross-section and upgrading it to an urban cross-section. So that would be adding curb and gutter as well as storm sewer. In addition to that, we'd look at adding bike lanes and sidewalks along this corridor. You can see here the current design looks at a roundabout at American Legion Road and Scott Boulevard. So that would be included with this project. And this project also includes about $2.2 million of STP funding.
What does the STP stand for again?
Surface Transportation Program.
Okay.
And where does the contributions and donations, is that from developers in that area, or is that
I believe that's from the school district.
school district?
And there's also, as development occurs, there is an impact fee that goes along with that. So there is some money there from developments that have occurred in that corridor.
The annual bridge maintenance and repair, this is a fund that looks to fund a couple different things. One is every other year we have a study done of existing bridges, takes a look at conditions and any need for repairs, and then would also fund those repairs. This is actually an increase from what it's been in the past, and what that really gets at is, in the past, we've had enough to kind of look and see what the issues were, but we didn't have any money to actually create those or complete those repairs. So this has been bumped up to help not only address some projects that we've been waiting to do, but also have some funding for repairs as they're needed.
Are these mainly residential bridges, like I know off of First Avenue between Muscatine, First Avenue and Court, there's a lot of bridges that follow the creek there. Is that where a lot of this is being done, or is it all over?
So we currently have some projects that we'll be looking at doing. One would be out here on College Street Bridge. The Iowa Avenue Bridge over the Iowa River is one that we're looking at doing. The Gilbert Street Bridge over the creek is another one where we have repairs that are kind of, we're waiting to do those. So those will be coming here probably in the next year or so. So it varies, and again, it just kind of depends on as they're needed, we would go ahead and address those.
Thanks.
LED streetlight replacement. So this project looks to, as kind of an ongoing process of basically retrofitting existing city-owned streetlights, so installing LEDs. Obviously, the main benefits there are reductions in energy usage and maintenance.
Former Mayor Regina Bailey has talked a lot about street lighting. Was this the type of street lighting that she was referring? Have you had any conversations with her about that?
I've been aware of some of those conversations.
Jeff, do you know?
I think she's
It's an important
she's more
topic.
focused in on the Mid-American conversions that are happening.
Okay.
This project deals with the city-owned lights, which are the decorative lights. So you can
Okay.
think of
So they
like
won't
the
necessarily affect
downtown
the
lights
residential.
and
Okay,
parking
thank you.
lots. But yeah, Mid-American is replacing all of theirs. I think over a 5-year period. Does that sound correct? So I think that's what she was concerned about, some of the brightness of that light in the neighborhoods and the spillover into homes. And we do get those complaints typically come to Ron and Jason and their staff, and they've been able to work with Mid-Am in most cases to get them to readjust lights and put additional shields on to help resolve some of those
Mitigate
issues.
that. Okay, thank
Yeah,
you.
I think Regina was also referring to making sure that the lights actually focus the light where it's
Right.
needed, instead of being just
That
this
was-
bright object that obscures your vision and makes you less safe, actually.
Topic I hadn't thought about a lot, but very important.
Is the decrease in this funding simply because we've already gotten a fair amount done, or? I'm sorry, didn't mean to put you on the spot. I've kind of have that question on a number of these of
Actually,
where we've gone
Susan,
up
I
or
believe
down.
was an increase from prior years' amounts. So there was a bump in 2017 for some repairs that were needed, and then it steps back down a little bit for future years, but it still is an overall increase from prior years.
Okay. Thank you.
McAllister Boulevard extension from Gilbert Street to Sycamore Street. This will, like I said, basically extend the McAllister Boulevard from its current terminus there east of Gilbert Street. The Sycamore Street project that was completed included a roundabout and for the future intersection of this street. And obviously with the recent opening of Alexander School, there's an increased need for additional east-west connectivity down here in this part of town.
On this particular project, I think a crucial thing is for the design of the street to reinforce whatever comes out of the form-based code work that's being done down there. And I'm sure you all are very aware of that. And I guess Dan Perolik's going to be here pretty soon, right? Or
yeah, I think we're
checking
looking
things out a little bit.
Those kickoff meetings in mid-February, and the design on this project won't start until after the form-based code study is completed.
And we currently own right-of-way to this.
No, and this is not even in the city limits at this point. So in order for this project to proceed, we're going to have some cooperation from the property owner, but I think we'll get that.
The Prentice Street Bridge replacement project, so this will replace the Prentice Street Bridge over Ralston Creek. Obviously, you can see some pictures here that it's certainly in need of replacing the triple culverts there. This includes up to $1 million in bridge funds. Will also include some stream bank protection as well as some storm sewer replacement in the area. Melrose Avenue improvements. This will look to reconstruct Melrose Avenue, IWV Road between Highway 218 and Hebel Avenue. This is a joint project with the county. It will look, more than likely will remain in a rural section. There has been discussions about possibly including a wide shoulder to allow for use for bicycles or other uses. Another thing is potentially including water main out to the landfill. That's something we've looked at in the past and kind of held off on, one of the reasons being potentially with this project, the vertical alignment of the roadway could change. So we didn't want to potentially put that water main in and then find out down the road it was going to be too shallow. So I think this would be a good time to kind of look at that project if that's something we want to do. It includes about $930,000 in STP funds. It also includes, like I mentioned, funding from the county as well to help fund part of the project. Buke Street reconstruction. So this will reconstruct the Buke Street from Washington Street to Iowa Avenue, including streetscape elements and utility improvements, similar to what was done on Washington Street. This is in the program for 2021 and is part of the Downtown Streetscape Master Plan. Kirkwood Avenue to Capitol Street connection. So this will look to extend Kirkwood Avenue and Capitol Street. It's included in the Riverfront Crossings Master Plan and really looks to increase connectivity within the Riverfront Crossings District, with the new park and future development in this area, really help with that connectivity. Foster Road elevation design from Laura Drive to No Name Road. This looks at the design of elevating Foster Road. So that's one thing to keep in mind, is that this is just for the design of that elevation. Obviously, this is an area that's susceptible to flooding, especially in '08, with some pretty major flooding out there. And so with Peninsula and the surrounding areas, this is their sole access, so that's been an ongoing concern. I'm sure all of you have heard from those folks. And so this project would look to come up with that design for a way to elevate Foster Road to have that access that could be maintained during flood events.
I'm thinking this is a contingency, in case we can't get it done up through the.
Really, I
Forest
think if
View
the Forest
development.
View project moves forward and we're able to work out something with the developers there to get that secondary road established and punch through to Dubuque, then we can probably back away from this project, and that's partly why we don't have the construction funds budgeted in there. But in the event that that project falls apart or for whatever reason doesn't move forward, I think we seriously need to look at fast-tracking this project. So we wanted to have some design funds, at least in the budget, should we need to move forward.
Can we name no name road?
That's a tradition, Terry.
I like
Terry Dickens Road.
We had some concerns that were expressed last summer by some of the residents there regarding flood mitigation. Are there any capital projects that we need to address that, or can you maybe update on just where we are in that quick, because it's directly related to this?
Probably referencing the Idlewild stormwater
Yes.
project, if you guys could update that.
So we are wrapping up the study now that will look at those improvements for the Idlewild area. So really what that looks to do is, right now, the drainage for the area, I guess, kind of to the north, really goes through Idlewild. And so what that project would look to do is potentially pull some of that drainage out of Idlewild and directly, or pipe it directly to the river. So that study is nearly complete. With that, we would then move to construction of that project.
And that's fully funded in previous years, so that
Okay,
you
I
don't
was
see
gonna
it
say-
here,
I was
but
gonna say, will we see
have
it?
the resources to
All right,
move
sounds good.
forward.
Thank you, Jason.
The next two projects are, as I mentioned, they'll be joint projects with the DOT. So the DOT is looking to do overlay of Governor Street, and then the next one will be Riverside Drive. And so these will be joint projects with them. The Governor Street overlay looks at the stretch of Burlington from Van Buren to Governor, and then from Governor from Burlington up to Dodge. This would, like I said, would include asphalt overlay of the roadway, would also look at ADA curb ramp repairs. We would also look at doing some utility repairs as part of this project. So that, in most cases, would be possibly some manhole repairs or adjustments, but mostly focusing on storm sewer intakes and storm sewer in the area. And I believe the money in the budget includes really our portion of it. So I would anticipate that the DOT's contribution will be much more than that, as they'll be responsible for the overlay portion of it. The Riverside Drive asphalt overlay, again, similar project, would go from Rocky Shore down to Sturgis Corner. And again, when we're doing this project, that's when we would look at potentially doing the streetscape improvements there at the Benton Street and Riverside Drive intersection. And both of those are scheduled for 2018. First Avenue, Scott Boulevard intersection improvements. This project constructs a roundabout at the intersection of First Avenue, Scott Boulevard, so that would be near the ACT entrance. This is an area we routinely get comments, I guess you could say, regarding queuing and delays at the intersections, especially during peak hours. We've completed, I guess, what would sort of amount to a feasibility study, and it appears that a roundabout would work well here and help to address those issues.
Will it be 2 lanes or 1 lane?
1 lane.
So it won't be like that one in Mount Vernon?
It will not be like the one in Mount
Go ahead.
Gilbert Street intersection improvements. This project really focuses on the intersections of Gilbert Street at Washington Street and College Street, as well as kind of the corridor between them. It would look at curb ramp replacement. These ramps don't include truncated domes, so it would look at bringing those into compliance. It would also look at replacing the existing traffic signals at these intersections. I don't know if you can tell here, but some of the paint is starting to come off, and you can see where it's in some of its past life, it's been different colors, and it really is getting to the point where it probably needs to be replaced. Similarly, with the street lighting along Gilbert Street, we would look at replacing the street lighting there on the east side of Gilbert. The middle picture there on the top, you can see there's actually 3 different types of of poles there, of lighting poles that have been installed over the years. So this would look to extend kind of the lighting from the downtown, that style, along the street here and make it more consistent. And really what this would do is try and be in coordination, obviously, with the Chauncey project, but the reconstruction of the Chauncey Swan Park and kind of have those occur at the same time.
With regard to this particular project, I know in the past we've had some discussions about a road diet for Gilbert Street. And my recollection is that there were two complications that we would need to think about. One has to do with the entrance and exit of fire trucks from our station, which is connected to this project, I think, and the other has to do with the Burlington-Gilbert Street intersection. So I'm wondering whether this particular project with regard to Gilbert and Washington foresees or at least could accommodate a road diet on Gilbert Street.
And I think it could. You know, typically when you're talking about signals and road diets, the issue is you have mast arms that aren't long enough. That's typically I guess the change that needs to occur when it comes to signals. So if that's the case for this project, we could look at making sure those mast arms are long enough. It's really a pretty simple fix when you're doing it at the time you're installing them. It becomes a little more difficult when you're trying to retrofit or do it after the fact. So it would be much easier to do it at this time.
So just to clarify, you're saying that the signals can be designed to accommodate a road diet in the future, not necessarily implement the road diet at the time of these improvements?
Correct.
Okay.
Got it.
So if there's a desire to push forward on a Gilbert Street road diet sooner than the direction you gave us several months ago, that would require separate funds and separate attention here.
So that could be a topic for discussion at our, what is it, which meeting are we, Susan, which meeting?
February.
In February, the first meeting in February?
Yeah, and it's just as a reminder, I think after we presented the downtown traffic model, the direction that we're pursuing is Clinton Street this year, Madison Street in 18, and then we'd circle back and decide, you know, I think there was some discussion about Gilbert, and there was some discussion about the Market Jefferson couplet up there and whether we want to explore two-way. But Clinton and Madison are the two that are on our kind of to-do list right now.
Annual sewer main replacement. This is a fund that looks to repair and maintain the sanitary sewer system. So this really is depends on needs. This could be anything from spot repairs of sanitary sewer, manhole replacements. This includes our sewer lining project, comes out of this fund. So again, kind of a variety of sewer main repairs.
Is this enough money? I mean, we're looking at a lot of aging sewer lines.
I mean, we could always use more money, but I think it's been operating pretty well. You know, again, there's always times where things start out a high priority and get moved down the list depending on other things that come up. But I would say for the most part, we're able to address the most critical repairs.
I was impressed in one of the reports, some of them that you have planned for replacement were like 1950s something. Does your decision base on that? Do you look at those were in the 50s, maybe we should be looking at repairing, or do you wait for a problem?
I think you consider age, but age itself is not the only factor. You know, there are some locations that are even older that are in pretty good condition. And so I think you start to look at age as kind of a reason to keep an eye on it, but it's not the only reason for replacement. The backup generator and electrical system upgrade, this project would replace the existing generator that is located down at the wastewater plant. The existing generator is not sufficient to power the entire plant, so it's undersized from that, I guess, position. In addition, you can see here on the lower picture there that during a recent flood event, there was significant effort that had to be expended to protect it from being flooded. So this project would not only look to upgrade the generator, but would also look to elevate it so that the basically the generator and controls would be above the floodplain.
How would this be funded?
This is entirely from sewer fees.
The Scott Boulevard Trunk Sewer Project, this is the one that's been around for a little bit. And what it would do is look to extend the sanitary trunk sewer from where it currently ends north of the Iowa Interstate Railroad there, and would extend it north to the existing lift station that's located North American Legion Road. With the recent or ongoing, I guess, school construction, it would anticipate not only that, but also future development in this area, and so that this would help to accommodate that future development.
That project would take an existing pump station offline there in the Windsor Ridge subdivision, and we would do a tap-on fee with this project. There's already a tap-on fee for the piece that is extended up to the railroad tracks now, so we'll recoup the cost through development fees.
Is that currently in Iowa City? I'm looking at the mobile home park. I thought that was not, or is that going to?
It's currently not in Iowa City.
Okay.
Yep.
Melrose Court sanitary sewer replacement. This project will replace the existing sanitary sewer that's located along Melrose Court. This is a sewer that's relatively deep and has had a history of issues and need for maintenance. So this would look to elevate the sewer and then replace it more or less in place. The Nevada Avenue sanitary sewer replacement, this project would, again, replace existing sanitary sewer. This is another one that is sort of a problem area. We've had repeated need for maintenance and ongoing issues, so again, replacement of an existing sanitary sewer. The West Park lift station rehabilitation, so this is the replacement of an existing lift station located within City Park. It was constructed in the 1960s, and so it's outdated. It was also completely flooded in 2008. So the new project would upgrade the lift station, and again, would also elevate the generator and controls above the floodplain. Heat exchanger replacement. So this will replace an existing heat exchanger. It's nearing the end of its useful life. It's suffered some internal corrosion, and it's just getting to the point that it needs to be replaced. We've looked at repairs, and it's just not cost effective to repair it at this point. It really needs to be replaced. A study has been completed and to determine kind of type and size of the replacement. So all that's been completed, and now it's just time for the actual replacement of the unit. Digester complex rehabilitation. So this is repairs to the digester complex at the wastewater plant. You can see here that there's part of this has been caused by the struvite deposits. It includes replacement of the heat exchangers, renovation of the digester covers, replacement of piping and recirculation pumps. Again, it's aging equipment that's in need of repair or replacement. Again, the struvite deposits are really taking their toll on some of this equipment.
What is struvite? Is it a chemical they use, or
You
what?
don't know the answer to that?
No, I don't. I
Oh,
might.
my God.
About to
It's
find out.
it's actually a component. A lot of it is phosphorus, so it's part of the nutrient removal that we're doing at the plant now with the new process.
I bet you all would have failed.
You're right.
Some of the water division projects, here, we have a couple of water main replacement projects. A lot of these are 1950s vintage, so it's just that time frame where whatever was going on as far as construction, it hasn't held up as well. So it's just kind of that era where we've had some issues and need to replace those mains. The ground storage reservoir VFD upgrades, this has been kind of an ongoing project. So this is kind of finishing up that. I believe in 17, we'd be looking at the Bloomington GSR for the VFD upgrades.
I give up. What's a VFD?
Variable frequency drive, so it's a way to kind of work with the pumps to be more efficient. And then the nutrient removal project, there's been a study completed, and so this would be just kind of implementing the recommendations from that study. Some of the additional water division projects, again, some water main replacement projects similar to before. The water plant computer control system replacement. This is replacement and upgrade of the SCADA system. The current system is obsolete, and so it's just to the point that it needs updating. The water distribution pressure zoning, this is looking at the system as a whole. Currently, it's one pressure zone, and we're starting to get reports of low water pressure, especially on the far reaches of town. And so this is kind of looking at, is it time to go to multiple pressure zones, or what can we do to help alleviate some of those issues? Silurian well rehabilitation. So this will look to replace the 3 Silurian wells. These are a primary source of low nitrate groundwater. So we use that to help mix with other sources to some degree dilute some of the other sources to bring those, again, those nitrates down overall. And really this is, over time, there's been a reduction in capacity, and so it's just a way to kind of get that back, get that capacity back for those water sources. The water plant softener improvements, what this would do is automate operations and result in improved process control and safety. So it's really just kind of automating that process. The Jordan well rehabilitation, similar to the Silurian wells, this would look to make repairs, again, to kind of bump up that capacity and make those improvements. South Capitol Street water main replacement. This is a project, a water main replacement project. You know, here not too long ago, we've had some main breaks along this stretch that have been pretty major events. With a significant amount of damage. So this is a 1960s vintage. It's just something that's a stretch that really is in need of repair to address those ongoing water main breaks. We anticipate that this replacement would occur around the same time you'd be looking at other improvements down in this area. Again, Capitol Street extension, that kind of stuff. Forest Avenue water main replacement, again, a water main replacement here, again, that 1950s age pipe with a history of water main breaks. Process analyzer replacement, so this will, I believe it's $25 or $25,000 annually starting in 2018. So this would be kind of an ongoing process to replace these components. It's a situation where manufacturers will no longer support repairs or ongoing maintenance of these items, so it's just, we need to upgrade them. The distribution building repair, so this is water distribution. You may remember some of this on our tour of the public works sites. This would look to repair the roof, exterior walls, and foundation to address locations where water's getting in. It would also look to make repairs and updates to staff area, again, to kind of make that a better work environment. One thing that would certainly help with these improvements is it would help to improve efficiency and cut down on heating and cooling costs. The water plant roof replacement, this would replace the roof membrane and repair areas where we've had some water damage occur. So the membrane is actually beyond sort of its recommended lifespan, so it's just time to go ahead with that replacement. And finally, the collector well capacity improvements. This would kind of look at two phases. The first one being kind of a study phase to take a look at the existing facilities and determine a plan how we could go about increasing our capacity for these facilities. And then the second phase would really be implementation of the findings of that study. With that, I'm done.
Wow, that was a lot. So I'm really leery of ending before our 7 p.m. deadline, but we're doing pretty well so far, aren't we? I want to say one word about the water plant. When I was doing this gig 20 years ago, meaning being on the city council 20 years ago, the joke was, don't drink the water. And it's really pleasing to know that that is not the joke anymore. Nobody tells it, because we have a really fine drinking water plant, and it's operated really well. So praise to the water staff for what they've been doing.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jason. Hi, Chris.
Hello. Good afternoon. I won't have quite as many as Jason, so this won't last quite as long. First project we have is a landfill equipment building replacement. This is a nice 1980s vintage metal building that we have here. Currently, we can't fit, so we've got a new bulldozer and a new compactor. We actually can't fit those in these buildings. The sizes of the equipment have changed over the years, so we're not able to get them inside when we have to actually maintain them. As you can see, from the bottom right-hand corner, even when the door is shut, you still can't get the elements completely closed out. Locker rooms, there's not enough capacity for staff. The showers aren't adequate for what we need. So there's a lot of different changes that need to happen. We've pushed this, kind of moved this project around because we've had other more pressing needs that have forced us to move this one, but it's one that's coming up, and that's in 2019 that we have that project. The landfill tarp development system. So what we're looking to do with this, and I kind of touched on this when I was here Saturday, is that we're looking to change our fill method at the landfill to more of a flat fill. And the reason we're doing that is others that have undertaken this have shown large increases in the amount of compaction they get, which what we hope is that that'll extend the life of our cells, allowing us to hold off on when we build new cells, which in turn saves us money as we continue to move on through the life of our landfill site. And we moved that to 17, so that's, assuming it's approved, that's something we'll do right away so that we can get started with that on our current cell and get that rolling. The leachate pumping system. So one of the projects that we just completed was a over $1 million gas expansion project. Kind of the next phase of that. I mean, if you can imagine what a gas well looks like, and we'll say this is the pen I have, your gas screen goes up part of the way of your well. For a lot of our wells, we have liquid so far up that well that we're not able to get to the gas that we need to pull it up out of the system. So what this will help us do is pull the liquid, the leachate out of that in order to allow better gas coverage and to have better management of our gas system at that point. The landfill cell design. So this is one that's currently scheduled for 20 and 21. We might be coming back to move the design of that up just so we have that, so when it's time to construct, we have that design ready. But what that'll be is where we're filling at now, you're kind of looking down where that trash is, that's 09 where we're at now. So just to the north of that, which is this area just on the other side of the road, will be what the next phase of our cell design will be to fill in that area there. Parking facility restoration repair. So last time I was here, we pulled photos from actually the internet to show the types of construction. So we actually pulled ones these are all from our projects that we've done over the last couple of years. So this is an annual amount of money that it varies depending on what type of projects we're going to be doing, but as you can see, there's concrete repair, there's resurfacing, and then the bottom left-hand corner, we put in additional funds in this year's, for the next project we do, to rehabilitate the stair towers over at Chauncey Swan, because they're in need of a makeover in order to. It's one of the few that we actually have dry-walled stair towers. A lot of times they're bricked, and we're having issues with moisture in the dry wall, so we're gonna refurbish that. Parking facility enforcement automation, you know, this project's been ongoing as we continue to automate processes within, and really what we're looking at here is equipment for the Harrison Street facility, as well as additional equipment for Chauncey Swan. So once we determine what direction we're gonna go there based off what we see at the Chauncey, once that project's completed, we'll probably be making some equipment changes over at Chauncey Swan as well.
I certainly hear lots of complaints about the way in which one has to pay at Chauncey Swan. People get frustrated by trying to use the equipment. At least that's what I see.
Yeah, that was when we did the on-street, our choices were a system similar to that or the single space system. And a lot of the concerns we heard out of Cedar Rapids were that people had, like if there's rainy days, people would have to wait. It's the first, I guess I haven't heard a lot of complaints about the Chauncey Swan, so it's good to get that kind of feedback when you.
I mean, it's not so much that people have to go to a specific site to enter a number or whatever. It's that they get confused when they're trying to pay, and that's what I'm conscious of.
Paying ahead, Jim, as opposed to paying when you leave?
Yeah, I
Is
thought
that
it was
the
free
confusion,
parking.
I think?
So I didn't know. So it's
Yeah,
it's
well,
confusing.
you have to pay ahead at
Right,
Chauncey
right.
Swan, yeah,
So people get confused.
yeah, about how to do it.
Wait till I have to remember their license plate. The transit facility relocation, this one's, I think, been a continually moving target and has been on CIP for quite a while. Obviously, when we did the public works facility tours, we were able to take a look at the transit facility. We have a site picked out, excuse me, now it's just a matter of the funding mechanism, and then the feasibility study. Those are really the things that are hanging out there, so that'll continue to keep moving until we know where that federal funding is gonna land, and then we'll be able to go ahead and make that move. The bus shelter replacement. So the top left is actually one of our units, and then the other 4 different designs that we've come across that we like to replace it. So we'll have a RFP that we're putting together that'll be going out, that will, right now along the Towncrest and Lakeside routes is where we have, I think we have 9 replacements and 4 or 5 new shelters already established in the plan. And then we're going to build on that for future projects as they occur. The parking equipment EMV upgrade. So much as you've seen when you walk into places to pay with a credit card, the use of the EMV and the chip and pin, and the parking equipment is going to that to where we have to upgrade to those types of standards for all of the places that we take credit card payments. So this will be a way to upgrade that parking equipment that you see in our facilities in order to meet the security measures that are coming across for credit card security. The transit facility office remodel, a lot of this is, so 1984 was when that facility was built. Not knowing when we're ever going to see federal funding, there's just still some things that have to take place in order for us to have better space to function in, carpet replacement, some remodeling of the actual office space in order to have a more adequate workspace, and that's what these funds are put in there for this project. The bus sign replacement. Now, this is one a few years ago we didn't really anticipate having to do, but the equipment that we use and the vendor that we had no longer supports this style. The nice thing is that we have 11 heavy-duty buses that we ordered and are being manufactured, so those will be replaced as a part of that. We'll have the new signs with the new buses as they come in, so we really only have to replace half of our fleet And so that's what those funds are in the project, is to replace those remaining signs that we're not able to get to as with the new buses we're ordering.
How much, so, now knowing that, I mean, was there any conversation with the company to not only necessarily help us out with the cost, but also, I mean, obviously you looked at it for the future as far as the new buses coming online, but to me that just sounds tricky. I mean, I don't understand how we're not necessarily being accommodated for something that they're switching to.
So a lot of it, I mean, if you, and I kind of touched on this too, the buses that you actually see coming offline are 21-year-old vehicles. So it has to do more with the age of the equipment and the fact that we don't really get funds to replace that. They're supposed to have a 12-year to 15-year life. We're pushing 21, 22 anymore just because the funding's not there to replace them unless you want to use just local dollars for those replacements. So, to expect that either the software piece, as the signage is getting more digital and it's more about software, that's going to last the 20 years, I think it'd be tough. I think when they first set them up, and we didn't even get in on this when this company was first, obviously it had been well established, so they ran their platform for quite a while before it went to the point of not being supported.
We have buses that are like 10 years old, 10 to 5, right? I mean, would this affect those buses in particular?
Yeah, because I don't think any of us anticipated that when we bought those buses, that we went to match the same system we had, and at that time they didn't know their platform would be changing. So we're still 5 years out on a software platform. So, and we have some that we're replacing now that are actually physical scrolls that aren't actually digital. So it's more of the scroll. Does that make sense? They're actual. I see what you're saying, that somebody sells you a product that then goes out of. But I think that platform lasted for quite a while, and we utilized it for a couple decades before we were able to switch it. So.
No, I just thought there were new buses literally like 5 years old that we're still saying that we need to change it for our software.
Right, and still in the grand scheme of that type of a system, you might run into that occasionally. I mean, I don't think they knew, and maybe they did 5 years ago, but that doesn't mean necessarily that they knew within that 5-year window they were going to be able to make the change, and therefore I don't know that we were being cheated in any way out of the product. That I think that's just the nature of when you're talking more of a software package versus a physical unit.
I think it's just indicative of the technology changes that come along, and people aren't going to support what they see as an outdated product or model forever, and so.
I mean, I totally agree. I'm not questioning.
Sure.
I'm just kind of using my own knowledge. When I've done some large purchase upgrades, it was always a question whether or not the upgrade at the time would be compatible 10 years in the future. And granted, there can't be any guarantees, but I mean, there had to be some type of conversation along those lines to ensure that we weren't just buying a product that a year, 2 year, 5 years down the line, you're going to say we're going to go in a totally different direction. Then I would possibly go with another company.
I mean, when you're purchasing, and not to really get down in too much of the detail when you're buying a bus, but it's a piece of equipment where you have a base model and then nothing but options. All of these, you might have 7 different options for this. So as you're going through all of the different technologies that you can utilize, at that point when you're going through, how long has it been there? When do you anticipate that it's going to, at the point that we ordered, nobody knew that it was going to be extinct at the time that we were making that move. So.
Land obsolescence.
I think that's it.
All right. On the radar, Ron, are you going to do that, or?
I'll probably have Julie come up also for the parks projects. All right. So the first on the radar project, so the unfunded list starts on page 604. The first project is the unfunded number 12. This is the Gilbert Highway 6 intersection improvements. This was a project that we had in the CIP a number of years ago. As the riverfront crossings redevelops, there's going to be a need to do something in this intersection and actually in the corridor of Gilbert Street. Not only will it be from a traffic standpoint, but it'll also be from a utility standpoint also. Rerouting some of the sanitary sewer and just making it operate better in that area. unfunded 20 is the Peninsula Secondary Access, so we've already hit on that a little bit. With the Forest View redevelopment, obviously there's hopes that that project will occur with that, but it is one that we're going to have to be looking at as that development occurs. The Foster Road extension, Dubuque to Prairie du Chien, was a project that we did have in a funded year previously. It is unfunded number 21. Basically, as we look at some redevelopment potentials in those areas, or developers look at those areas, it's a project that we'll be looking at. This would include also some sanitary sewer upgrade in that corridor. And then the Raret South Sewer, unfunded 47, and then the Carson Lake Regional Stormwater, unfunded 53. This would look at opening up the potential for redevelopment to the west of 218, south of Raret Road. Would be a sanitary sewer extension underneath Highway 218, and then the regional stormwater management in that area.
Move on to a couple park projects, but one quick, you had asked about the age of Weatherby Park. The shelter is interesting. It was actually built in 1978, but then in 2000, which is probably what you're remembering, it was moved and a cupola was added to the top of it, so there was some work done to it then. Playground was 1993, but then again in 2000 there was a few upgrades made to it then too. So both are considerably older, but have had some renovations done to them. So we have Lower City Park. This master plan was completed last spring. It does a lot to make the park a little more flood tolerant, adds some space to the Riverside Theater for increased functions that could be held there, and makes it safer from the flooding area. And then East Side Sports Complex down by American Legion Road, to the south of that, new baseball fields, soccer fields, space for an indoor facility if we chose, and also neighborhood park functions as that area develops with more neighborhoods in the new school.
And then the Riverside Drive redevelopment, that would be the public works site. As we move our operations off of that corner, we'll have to determine whether it's something we're just going to sell it outright, or if we're going to look at doing any type of subdivision in that area for that corner.
And finally, we added an off-road cycle facility. Location to be determined. We're looking at that somewhat during our park master plan, but with the popularity of cyclocross, and as we talked during the operating budget, one of the adult sports that's growing right now is off-road cycling, and having areas to do that, and also initiative of the Convention and Visitor Bureau.
And with that, open up the floor with questions and any discussion.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen,
When we talk about unfunded, if we were to fund them, would that then be 6 years out? Is that pretty much what, because this is sort of a 5-year capital improvement plan, is my understanding. Is that how that would generally work?
Or we have to switch something else around.
Okay.
Prioritize.
Yeah.
And there's obviously there's a whole long list of unfunded. We just highlighted a few that we think there's perhaps a higher probability that you'll hear about them. Either people will advocate for them, or a development project may come along that triggers discussion about those projects. But there's a long list in there, and frankly, we could probably continue to develop even longer list. You all could come up with even more projects to add to that list.
I just know, like 21 Foster Road extension, at one time it was talked about taking some of the dirt from there to use it for the Gateway project. So at one time it was a little farther. I know the person that was trying to develop it was willing to use the land there, but I know that's moved back a little bit because nothing's happened.
There's some development interest. We've had a few proposals come before us, probably with unrealistic expectations on density. But we continue to get some interest in there, and it may be something where the private sector ends up paying for a good portion of that. I think that connectivity would be really nice.
Plus, there's a lot of people that use the Old Jewish Cemetery Road, I guess it's called there. And that's not really a good road to be cutting across on, because it's very narrow and very high residential.
yeah, I continue to think that area along the Foster Road extension has lots of potential, but we should use our decision about whether to build a road and how, how to pay for it as part of the overall development scheme that would be worked out with potential developers. And Jeff knows all this better than I do.
John's talked a lot about maps and understanding that year to year where we have the investment in terms of capital improvement projects is going to vary. Some year it's going to be in this region, some year it's going to be the other one. And of course, we try to address all needs of the city. But I think for me, if it's possible, probably not this year, but maybe going forward, I think it would be interesting from year to year just to see a map of where the investment's going on a year-to-year basis, just so in our own mind we can have a sense of that. So just to request, is that something that we have the capability to do or we already are doing?
We have the capability of doing that, and I think that's something that we can have prepared for you for future discussion.
Okay, thanks.
I'd say lacking a map at the moment. Still, the array of projects we've heard about this afternoon felt pretty balanced to me. It felt like a pretty good mix of projects around the city. But it's only a feeling. What about you folks down there?
I agree with you, Jim, because being a West Sider, it seemed like the West Side seemed to be forgotten quite a bit, but there are quite a few things, even the West Side parks, thank you, Julie, are looking for improvements in the Road area and that area. I agree with you, Jim, that it's really pretty well balanced. But seeing it color-coded on a map, I guess, would be good.
Yeah, my perception, I think, is the staff has always done, I think, a good job, not necessarily trying to distribute projects geographically from year to year, but look at where the highest need is. And it's varied, obviously, from year to year. You might look at one year and the west side's really high or the east side's really high, but where's the need, and also where's the reinvestment so it doesn't increase our long-term costs? I mean, you let things go too long, and then you let them deteriorate to the point that your expenses are significantly higher. So making sure that we're doing that maintenance. I think the map would be helpful, certainly to see, and maybe it's not done on a one-year scale. Maybe it's done like on 5 years or something,
really
so that
do,
because of such significant variation, from year to year. I had a question that I kind of asked earlier. Dennis, when I'm looking at this and on some of these projects, it shows prior year numbers. Are those just lump sums that have been dedicated to these projects in a prior year, or are some of them what annual funding has been in prior years?
Some of the annual ones, that's cumulative. So that would be prior years that we funded that annual project versus some of those, say, like the electricals and the generator backup.
Yeah.
We'd actually allotted a portion of that funding a couple of years ago for that project, and then it was delayed for various reasons. And so now we've already accumulated a lot of funding for that project in place. It's just been delayed and is now moving forward at this time. So it is a variety of things, but some of those are the annual
Some are
accumulation of
annual.
those projects.
Is it safe to just think of that as money in the bank for that particular project when you see that?
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, like for the Gateway project, some of that funding has been put in place previously, and now it's been expended in the upcoming year and in future years.
Okay. And any of the dollars that are shown under 2017, I mean, technically, we approved 2017 CIP budget previously. I mean, we're halfway through fiscal year 2017, so a lot of this projects may already be started, I'm assuming.
Some of the design may have started. One of those things was by doing that, we try to use the fiscal year to get that funding put into place. So as we accumulate during our fiscal year 2017 road use dollars or general fund dollars, then that construction would start in the spring of 2017. So it's really of having that funding in place, but then also as we're starting this construction year, going back and looking at those projects and the funding and making sure that's exactly what we want to do. So it's a matter of we started accumulating that funding at the start of the fiscal year. Now it's a matter of shoring up those projects and ensuring that's what we're going to do.
I guess my point in asking that question is I think as a council, we have to be incredibly cautious about suggesting changes to 2017 projects, because, I mean, we may have already expended time and money in terms of design work and things like that. Not that we can't talk about them, but I think those may be pretty tough to change without being very inefficient with money and time at this point.
Yeah, a lot of the changes in 2016 have to do with high priority changes. So, you know, if something comes up that was not anticipated, that, I believe there was a sewer main project there in Melrose where there was a significant repair, and then that project moves up and it allows us a chance to put that project into that year as that need arose.
One thought I've been having on the mapping issue is whether it may have potential to be correlated with other values that we might be able to map as well. For example, if we were to view property value as a measure of quality of life in a neighborhood, you know, if property values are going up, that arguably could be viewed as a reflection of the quality of life in that neighborhood. Correlate the return on investment of our capital projects as it relates to property value, so that where, you know, we see property values are flat, that may be an area that we need to at least give a look at what is it that is causing the values in those areas to remain flat. How can we leverage capital projects, and this could apply to the school district as well, leverage projects to improve property values in those areas where they seem to be flat over time. Or measure, you know, even in those areas where property values are increasing, how are these capital projects affecting those property values? Because in the end, I think that's a lot of what we're trying to accomplish with capital projects is what is the health and vitality and as it relates to the city at a neighborhood scale. Because one of the struggles I have with this program is it's viewing things to some degree in aggregate. And yet I think we realize that my experience of Iowa City is different from your experience, and in many respects it ties to neighborhood. So to the degree we can disaggregate the program, I think there's some value to that.
The only thing I would add, not necessarily to that point, is, you know, again, great job as far as listing these projects, and it seemed like, obviously, as you were going through, but also reading some of the projects, there were areas of concern and need that you were addressing. I'll be honest with you, I would say that, that Ron or whoever was in charge of putting that tour together did a wonderful job, because it's really stayed at the forefront of my mind, and it makes me not worry, but want to ensure, as I see some of the, I don't mean to throw the Parks and Rec department out there, but I saw some of the maintenance that was discussed as a at the Parks and Rec department standpoint, and I would just want to ensure that we're having the same level of discussion around maintenance of those buildings as well. I know that it's a different type of maintenance, and so if you're doing the maintenance around computers is different than any type of maintenance that you would have around buildings, and when you're talking about streets or road work or transit, obviously as well. But to get to that sort of disrepair, it just made me feel bad as a council member to not necessarily be as aware as I should have been to ensure that we were thinking about how CIP dollars were going towards those particular projects. So, I would just say in the future, I mean, obviously we have a plan. I'd like to move forward on that plan and do whatever possible to make sure that plan gets implemented. But, if there's other projects that we're not seeing for whatever reason that need some repair, obviously we're relying heavily on you, but I just wouldn't want that. And the other piece of this, and there's not too many items on the CIP that I thought about, but I know I brought you up, Chief, to talk about the fire station, and I know that isn't necessarily a good project to talk about, but if there are projects where we can recoup dollars from other agencies or other, really more other governmental entities, I really want to have more of that discussion. Again, not necessarily in a money grab sense, but more, at times we're sharing resources we don't necessarily know that we're sharing, whether that be, the bike and trail system that I think we talk about, that the county I think talks about extensively as well. We really need to think about how we're doing projects as a region. It's the same thing I would be saying if I was talking at Coralville or I was talking North Liberty as well, because to me, it just matters more. And so as we have, as we do the East Side Complex, which I know is far in the future possibly, I mean, that's a change for the region, even though it's happening just in Iowa City. So just in the future, as we're thinking about those things, those are my two major concerns, more highlighting on the first concern because that was kind of gut-wrenching to see that, the water dripping, and it's funny because it reminds me of working with my grandfather and seeing some of those things in his old shop, but I just wouldn't want to work there, and I don't necessarily know that the people that were there would want to work there as well.
All right, I want to ask a question about one significant project that does not appear on the CIP, and that's the possible access center. So surely, Jeff, you've been thinking about that, and you have ideas about how it could possibly be inserted in our CIP somehow, somewhere, at some time, depending on all the other moving parts. I wonder what your thinking is at the moment.
Well, I didn't feel like we had enough information, still don't have enough information to really put anything in the budget. There's two components. There's the capital cost and there's the operating cost. And before you move forward on the capital, you have to know how the operating is going to be solved. And I don't think that information, I think the committee that's working on that's getting pretty close. But certainly we didn't have that information. What I tried to do is just ensure that we have the flexibility to move forward should we need to in this particular fiscal year, so for FY2018. And really, I think I don't think it's realistic that an entity would need to contribute the entire capital budget in FY2018. We haven't acquired any land. We haven't done any detailed architectural studies or anything like that. I mean, something of this magnitude is going to take several years to move forward. If there's a push, and I think it's coming here pretty soon, for cities and the county to commit to a dollar amount, I think we can do that safely, and I can explain the different funding options we have, but I don't think those outlays are going to need to necessarily come at that same time. I think it's more of a commitment, and then perhaps the outlay for FY2018 becomes much smaller. If there's a land acquisition, if there's professional services that need to be done, architectural studies that need to be done to plan out the space, we certainly have the budget flexibility to accomplish that. So I feel plenty comfortable that we can react and that I can give you the assurances you need to commit to an ask when that comes forward. But until we have all those pieces, it's hard to place something in the budget.
Good deal. That's exactly how I thought you might respond. But yeah, good deal. Okay, any other questions for our terrific staff?
I just have a comment on where we are with the Robert A. Lee. I guess, to your point, Kingsley, I guess I'm really troubled. It's one of our premier locations. It's one of our premier facilities. And I guess I would like to see, not this year's budget, as Susan mentions, 2017, we can't make any change on that. But just for something to think about, I would really like to see us evaluate that for a full-scale reimagining of that space, consistent with its space as a recreational center for all Iowa Cityans. Easier said than done, but I am seeing a lot of high-value projects for, necessary pedestrian extensions and these sorts of things. But I would really like to see that because we have a lot of our low-income friends that use that space, and it doesn't seem like we have the investment there that we should, consistent with the value of trying to be a recreational center for everyone. So that's obviously going to be a staff decision in terms of figuring out, even just coming up with a concept. But boy, I would certainly be supportive if all of a sudden staff had that sort of idea going on into the future. Because I think where it is, the fact that we're worried about the water and the pool and all that stuff, I think we can do better is sort of what my view on that is. But
it's we've got, I think, about close to $900,000 in the 5-year budget for facility improvements, but we've been spending a lot of money in there for the last several years, and I think Julie could tell you there's a ton of capital needs in there.
We've broken it down into several projects around the $700,000 level. and we've got enough to keep you going for several years based on that, just to keep it, to redo the systems. Everything in that building, from the plumbing to the electrical, is in the locker rooms. All those things are reaching that age where you'll be seeing this pretty much every year for the next several years. We've done a lot of smaller things, which you've probably noticed, which I think have really increased the use in the last year, just by lightening things up, the new paint job. A lot hadn't been done for a number of years, but we're biting it off piece by piece.
Okay, well, it's a complicated issue, but that may underscore the point that maybe we just need to get reimagine that as a totally
this
new
is a
facility.
point we could come back to at our meeting in February if you want to pursue
exactly.
it.
Yeah, and Julie and I frankly have talked about, do we continue to go down and tackle these improvements a couple $100,000 at a time, or do we bring in someone to reimagine how we might use that space? I think when you have that discussion, you almost need to take a step back even further and think about just that property in general, and whether the rec center as it's configured today is how we want to use that property, particularly as we get set to begin discussions on the City Hall property here, because we're going to be potentially turning over a large piece of property that we have control over now to the private sector, which then, if you think about municipal needs for the next 25, 50, 75 years, if we want municipal structures downtown, we're really left with the recreation center and that parking lot.
It's a complicated issue.
It's a very complicated issue, yeah. But and becoming a very expensive issue.
Rockne, in response to your comment, my belief ever since I moved here is that the neighborhood parks are undercapitalized. So when we're talking about neighborhood youth, basically the whole range of folks who could benefit from parks and open space, I would like to try to better address the issue where youth live, in a more distributed manner, as much as trying to focus. It's a difficult thing. There's we have, just like with the library, you have a sort of a single central facility, and at the same time there's a need that, as Iowa City grows, needs to be addressed as well. It's a challenging issue in my mind.
Okay, are there any other major topics anybody wants to bring up? And if not, we should probably give everybody a break and a chance to go home and live the rest of their lives. So. I'm not hearing anything, so we will revisit the budget and CIP at the first meeting in February. That's right.
Yeah, and I just encourage, if any council members are going to be introducing things on the 7th, if you can give us a heads up on that. We have to set the public hearing on the 21st. So if you identify something on the 7th and you want to make changes that require us to go back and do research, you're probably looking at a special meeting to resolve that answer. So we can be prepared and help you prepare to have that discussion on the 7th if you give us a heads up on anything you might be thinking about.
Okay, good deal. Thank you to the staff for the great work in presenting the material, especially to Jason, who just spoke, for an hour, I guess, at least, about all the great projects that Public Works is doing. Ron, thank you. Dennis, thank you. Julie, thank you.
You're watching City Channel 4. On TV, online, on demand, on Facebook, and now on the go on your mobile device.